They can't even lose properly, folks. The 2025-2026 Toronto Maple Leafs in a nutshell. Outshot, outchanced, outpossessed. And you go to a shootout. Because why not? It's a year to tank things out and refresh and start again. And it's a fucking goddamn buyer's market. And then you go against two shitty teams in the Philadelphia Flyers and the New Jersey Devils. And you go to a fucking shootout. And lose in both of those. A team that I feel like I can't even remember a shootout game for the Maple Leafs in like years. Now here you are in back-to-back games in which you go to a shootout and pick up the loser point. It's unbelievable. The Toronto Maple Leafs. Just what's the leafiest thing you think they could do? What's the leafiest option? Because that's what they'll do. Yeah. Lots to talk about here. I don't know if there's that much to talk about from tonight's game against the New Jersey Devils, losing this one in a shootout in game 62 of the regular season on Leafs Nation After Dark, right here on the Leafs Nation 401 YouTube channel. But there's a lot to talk about the Toronto Maple Leafs in general. You guys know I've talked about it piece by piece here over the last little while, but the boys on Leafs Morning Take have been doing some unbelievable coverage about everything that is happening, or maybe the better way to put it at this point is what's not happening, because I'm not even sure at this point if Brad's phone is on. But they've been doing an amazing job Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern time, breaking everything down there. So with that, let's hear from the man himself from Leafs Morning Take, Nick Alberga. That was a hockey game, Nick.
I called it a Nolan Ryan, a no-hitter. It was
okay.
At least it was fun to watch. I mean, looking back at the game against Philadelphia on Monday, it was like pulling teeth. So at least I was entertained watching that game. We'll call it a win.
Okay, yeah, good point. This one was more fun to watch. Was it good hockey? No, but was it more fun to watch? Yeah, it was more fun to watch. I see you've got the Tank Commander poster behind you that was so eloquently crafted up. So I will ask you, a loser point in back-to-back games. What do we make of this right now? Because I'm going back and forth in my brain about what the best thing to do is. And, here on the After Dark show, I pull up the Tankathon, the tank simulator, the draft simulator at the end of every show. And every time I look at it, I'm like, the problem is you're kind of far away from the guys at the bottom. So what's the best outcome right now, Nick, in your opinion? What do you want a point? Do you want no points? Like, what the hell should this team even be doing?
Yeah, it's a good question. Go out there and play hockey. It's weird because there's still like 20 games left in the season. Like, that's a quarter of the 82 game slate still left to play, and they're so far gone, so far out of it. And it seems like there's a lack of cohesion up top between Berube and Tree Living. I'm sure we'll get to that conversation, but yeah, I just want to see some of the younger guys, and the younger guys being one guy, Easton Cowan, just play a lot of minutes down the stretch. I'll be honest, I was a little disappointed by the shootout. Like, there's no need to send Matthews over the boards or Nylander. Like, let somebody else shoot. It's weird to me.
Nylander is like one thing I understand what you're saying, and I don't disagree with you, but Nylander's like, all right, whatever, let him shoot. Like, he's your skill guy of the guys on this team right now. The Matthews one, I'm just sitting here scratching my head. I mean, who cares, win or lose, what happens in the game? You're not desperate for points at this point in time. I don't know, like, unless Brad Treliving and Craig Berube have subscribed to the Matthew Nyes motto, where they're just not looking at the standings right now. But points don't really matter. Why not try Cowan? Like, Matthews 30 seconds earlier was literally grimacing in pain on the bench, shaking his hand, and now he's out there trying to extend the shootout for you. Like, who cares? Just move on, give someone else a shot. Let's see what Cowan can do. Let's see what Michelli looks like in a shootout. I don't fucking know, but unbelievable stuff from just the decision making all the way around. I don't know, man. It's the season as a whole, though. Lineup decisions, lineup construction in terms of who plays with who's in, who's out. It's kind of what it's felt like all year long.
Yeah, I'll be honest too. Like, it just seems like mentally this team has checked out. Where
Yeah.
I know defense hasn't been their forte throughout the season, but they're not playing a lick of defense ever since the Olympic break. Like this, if it weren't for Anthony Stolarz, the Devils would have walked away and ran away with this game, quite frankly, and just destroyed the Maple Leafs. I think Stolarz was fantastic.
Mhm.
That's sort of the big positive I'll grab from this shootout loss. Although results don't matter at this point in the season, we're more looking forward to what happens on Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern time, or ahead of Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern time. But yeah, it just, there are so many issues with this team. It's such a deflating feeling covering them. And it's a long ass time, man, a decade since this Maple Leafs team were sellers. And I like the way you started the show because, yeah, so typical. The 1 year the Maple Leafs were sellers, and it's probably the one of many, let's be honest, coming up for this team. The 1 year they're sellers, it's a buyer's market, and
Mhm.
so many different players are available that the Leafs are like a last resort option for these other teams who are contenders.
Yeah, and I don't know if it was a tweet that you put out at the Golden Muzzy or if it was a text that you sent to our group chat. But the other thing that you brought up, I saw, was the fact that right-handed defensemen are flying off the shelves right now. And every year the Maple Leafs are looking for right-handed defensemen. You've got to pay an arm and a leg to get them. They're just not readily available. It drives me nuts a little bit. It's the way that the NHL works. It's not like people are withholding them just because it's the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's just, again, the leafiest thing possible. You look at this season, and if these guys are available, if the Leafs are pushing, and if this was last year, are they paying Fraser Minton and a first for a Brandon Carlo? No, maybe they're paying Fraser Minton and a first, but it's a better type of player. Maybe you get a Mackenzie Weegar back in that kind of deal. Maybe you're getting a Colton Parayko in that kind of deal and acquiring that kind of talent, who I would say is a significant upgrade over what you have in Brandon Carlo. That's just not the case. Let's go here, Nick, from the beginning. I don't want to do too much on this game. I'll just be completely honest with you, and I think the chat knows where I'm at. I don't really give a shit how these games go, other than really seeing these kids. Like, as you pointed out, when Cowan's playing a lot, that's what I'm going to be paying attention to. If they bring up Villeneuve and Thrun, Luke Hames, Jacob Quillen, and give these guys chances, that's what I'm going to care about in those games. Otherwise, who the fuck cares? Especially until Friday takes place. But going before the game, and then I want to talk some trade deadline stuff with you, because you guys have been doing a great job on Leafs Morning Take. You and Rosie, you and Dave there today, covering everything that is and isn't happening. One of the things that I saw, and it's a lineup thing, but it's also a bigger picture situation, and it's just chronological here of what happened today. Craig Berube being asked about who's going to play, and the lineups we saw at Leafs morning skate here today, where Lawton is in the lineup, Robertson, Stetcher, Scratches, OEL's in the lineup. You're looking at these guys and you're thinking to yourself, Bobby McMahon's in the lineup. Okay, they're just going to run these guys out there. And then Berube's asked, and he says, well, they're going to play tonight. Left it open-ended about tomorrow. He didn't rule it out, but he didn't say they would miss tomorrow. And then a couple of hours later, I film my fucking pregame video, I post it, and then the next thing you know, it's like, yeah, all three of these guys are scratched. Boom, boom, boom. I don't know if these guys are just trying to send smoke screens. I don't know if there's a full-blown disconnect happening between the front office, MLSE, the coaches, whatever, but it just seems like an unorganized mess right now, and it's confusing when it doesn't need to be. You're a seller. We know you're a seller. We know those guys aren't playing. Like, are you trying to play mind games with Sheldon Keefe? What the fuck are you doing right now?
Starts on the top, right? Even Keith Pelly, I think, at a press conference on Wednesday with TFC, and right away he was asked questions about the Maple Leafs and he deflected. He wouldn't answer questions. So for me, it starts at the top. We did the same thing, song and dance, last year with Brendan Shanahan. It starts at Keith Pelly. Like, we haven't heard from Keith Pelly aside from the letter to season ticket holders, which really didn't disclose much outside of the fact that they might use injuries as a bit of an excuse why this team is there. We haven't heard from Brad Treliving. I mean, we had the one interview that he did on Overdrive, but it was more in response to an article that was put out, right? So, like,
Yep.
Nobody has any clue the direction, what the team is feeling, how pissed they are, what they're open to doing. It's really bizarre because this time of year, more times than not, GMs will speak before and after it all takes place, and we really haven't heard the game plan. And so that's why we're sort of going in cold. But yeah, it's easy to connect the dots when Berube comes out, says something, and then next thing you know, these guys are pulled from the lineup. And obviously, I did some digging. They weren't really told anything. They just were told you're not playing tonight. So they're
Yeah.
upstairs. They're up in the press box eating buffalo wings at this point. Like it's just crazy the lack of cohesion inside the organization right now. And I think time is running out when it comes to this trade deadline and trying to extract value in some of the assets that you do have. And I do foresee a scenario, for example, in Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Would you be shocked if he's in the lineup tomorrow night and they don't actually trade this guy after the stunt they pulled today? I wouldn't.
No, I wouldn't be at all. And, I said to you guys, and we'll get into it a little bit more, but just to answer that question, like it feels like the market on these guys is getting a little bit tougher right now. And what I mean by that is, you look at the Edmonton Oilers, they're looking at Scott Laughton. They're looking at Nick Waugh. We know those names were being associated. And you know that the other thing that was going to be involved in this was they're trying to offload Mangiapane, right? And I know a lot of people in this chat have pushed back on me and being like, we don't need Mangiapane. Well, the whole point I was trying to make was you take on Andrew Mangiapane and you sweeten the pot in terms of what you get back. Here's a good player, send us something else. And then you saw that exact situation take place here with the Chicago Blackhawks today. They sent Jason Dickinson, 50% retained, and Colton Dach to the Edmonton Oilers, and you got back a first-round pick and Andrew Mangiapane. Andrew Mangiapane could turn it around. I'm not saying that Andrew Mangiapane is going to be a guy who's going to score 30, 40 goals next season, but he's a guy who maybe could provide you some depth. He could find his game. It's a risk worth taking if you're going to get a first-round pick back. But the other side of the coin here is that's a center off the board. That's a team that was looking for a guy that you had and filled that hole here tonight. Maybe they want to add more. Maybe they want to push him down in the lineup. Entirely possible. But you got to think that when those guys start going and these teams start filling slots, the need for your players starts going down and the price and the cost starts going down too. It's just confusing. It feels like they're late to the party on some of this.
It is definitely a game of musical chairs. I mean, we can start in the Eastern Conference in terms of who's done anything at this point. I mean, Tampa's still out there. We know they're going to do something. Ditto for Detroit. Buffalo, we think, is getting cold in Parayko. Carolina's going to do something. Is Pittsburgh going to add? The Islanders may add a bit. Montreal, I mean, they seem pretty happy with where they're at right now in the standings. Boston's hovering on a playoff spot, so maybe you look at one of these teams that is pushing. Columbus, Washington, Ottawa. Then in the Western Conference, Colorado got Blankenberg tonight. I think they're going to pick up a center. That's just my opinion. Maybe it's a Kadri. Maybe it's somebody like that. Dallas got their D today. The Wild intrigue me. I think they're more likely to get a center. Vegas, I mean, they don't have much cap space. Anaheim, I think that could be a potential for a Leafs trade. Seattle, Utah is trying to do some big stuff here. Edmonton's pretty much cooked. LA, yeah. So, I mean, there's only 3 or 4 teams that would make a lot of sense from a seller's perspective. But this is the game of cat and mouse this time of year. And I think it's more likely still that McMahon and Lawton are on their way out and OEL's a guy that stays. But tomorrow's going to be a big day because once you get to Friday, and maybe that's the expectation, the hope for the Maple Leafs, maybe they wait a team out and somebody's desperate and they throw them an offer that they like and they do it.
Yeah, fair. I mean, that's optimistic thinking. That's where I'm kind of trying to be as well. But let's go a couple quick hitters on tonight's game in particular, and then let's get off this. And I've got some more trade deadline questions and stuff that I want to ask you here. So let's go quickly here on tonight's game. Easton Cowan plays a team low 8-23 against the Flyers on Monday night. And Craig Berube had the quote that made my head explode after the game, in which he said, "It is what it is," in regards to his slotting and where he's at in the minutes that he plays. Well, in tonight's game, he plays 17 minutes and 3 seconds. He takes Bobby McMahon's spot on the first line. What'd you make of Easton Cowan's game here tonight?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I didn't watch this game with a fine-tooth comb. I was just looking for offense. I had the over, so I was happy with that. Happy with Connor Brown, who, credibly enough, was on the Leafs the last time they missed the playoffs, scores late to make it a 3-3 game. We got the over. I thought he was good. Like, this is how I'm utilizing Easton Cowan down the stretch. I want to see him in the top 6. I want to see if he can mesh with some of the bigger guys who are going to be on the roster next spring. But I think it's all about confidence. I want Easton Cowan going into the summer feeling very, very confident about his abilities and his game. And unfortunately, that's been taken from him the last month. I mean, that'll do that to a young player. Imagine the psyche of the guy being a health bomb so many times, not going down to the American Hockey League because he couldn't during the break, getting a new tattoo, and just dwelling on some of his mistakes that he's made that's led to him being in the press box. I mean, jokes aside, this is more about confidence, Zach, and you can get serious confidence by playing with the likes of Matthews and Nylander and Tavares and Nyes and guys like that in the top six. So I think this is the proper deployment for Easton Cowan. He's going to make mistakes down the stretch. That's fine. I just want him feeling pretty good about life and positive and confident about his game heading into camp next year.
I'm with you. That's the one thing I keep saying is the asset management of Easton Cowan has been ridiculous this season. You know, press box, 8 minutes one night, 17 minutes the next, power play time, no power play time. It's just all over the place. Who he's playing with, it's everywhere. And I'm not loving how they've treated him, but I think that the way to do it is exactly what you just said, is run him out there with the big boys, let him make mistakes, let's see where he's at, and let's see what he's doing. And, if you don't want that to be the case, or you're not liking what his game looks like in the NHL, send him to the Marlies and let him go play down there for the rest of the season. I got no issues with that, but I think this is the way to do it. What they're doing, started to do, I should say, tonight. Next thing I want to go to in this one is Austin Matthews. He hasn't scored, I think, in 8 games here now. You can
9.
date that back 9 games, thank you, to before the Olympic break. We did see him, a picture, it was caught on the broadcast in the room, no upper gear on, no shirt on, and his shoulders all taped up. So maybe that has something to do with it, but what the hell do you think is going on with Austin Matthews right now? Is this a guy who's just suffered another injury again? Is this a guy who's burnt out? Is this a guy who's disinterested? Like, what's going on with his game, in your opinion?
All the above. I mean, I don't want to speculate because we know what happens when you speculate specifically on injuries to Austin Matthews. We just have no clue what's going on. We talked about this on Morning Take the other day. There was maybe a 10-game span where it looked like Austin Matthews, who scored 69 goals a couple years ago, save for those 10 to 12 games, he's been missing in action. Like, he hasn't been the dominant figure that he has in the past. And I think naturally you have to have that conversation. Zach, is this just what Austin Matthews is? Is he a 40-goal scorer, an 85-point guy? And that's being generous. Maybe he's an 80-point guy. Maybe he's a 75-point guy. But, the skating is where it starts for me, and the shot specifically. Like, we saw a bit of a muffin there in the third period. And if it's a shoulder issue, as you speculate, and we saw the tape on him during the intermission, as you brought up, then maybe it's a shot thing. Maybe that's leading to some issues. I think another thing to watch for, saw late in the game, he blocked a shot. He was favoring his thumb. I hated the fact that they put him out there in the shootout because you knew the ISO shot was coming of him shaking off the thumb. That's why he didn't score the goal. It wasn't that Markstrom made the save. Let's blame him on the thumb. I'm not blaming Matthews. Every player does the same shit. It drives me insane. Like the Matthew Nyes one on Saturday night where he bumps into Giroux. And after the goal, he's like coddled over and he's like, oh, like he's trying to tell you that he got hurt or, he got brushed up by the play. And it's like, exactly what happened. You fucked up, and that's life. So, yeah, it's been a perplexing convo with Matthews. Certainly more downs than ups this season. Obviously, the high winning gold in Milan. I thought the Americans got pretty much the same Austin Matthews we've seen throughout this season. Really, really strong defensively. Couple moments here and there offensively, but he's not the guy that he was a couple years back, plain and simple.
Yeah, I do think that it would help him elevate him in the NHL if he's playing with guys who are better suited to play alongside him. Like, even looking at him playing with William Nylander, I still don't think it's the best fit because you've got 2 shooters. Like, you have 2 guys who want the puck, and guess what? There's still only 1 puck on the ice. You can't have 2 guys who are puck dominant going out there and playing together at 5-on-5 as regularly. I don't think it works like that. I don't think they've ever really fit together that well. And I think that you give them somebody else who can play up there that's not Max Domi and Bobby McMahon. I think it helps, but I'm not saying that surpasses the benchmark that you just set out there of 40 goals, 80 points. Like, I'm not saying it blows past that, which is a concern. Next guy I want to get to here on this one is Anthony Stolarz. Nick Stolarz here in this game tonight makes 44 saves on 47 shots against. He has a 936 save percentage in this one. And by the way, Nick, after the game, he says, I thought we were better defensively. So I don't know what he was seeing or feeling or watching or experiencing out there, but it was different than what I was. What did you think of Anthony Stolar's game here tonight? Because he's strung together a couple of decent games.
Yeah, firstly, I want to say I really hope we can get Stolarz on Leafs Morning Take again for the third straight summer, just to dissect the ups and downs of what was the 25-26 campaign. And among them, I was in that scrum back early in the season where he called out the team defensively. And ever since, it has not been great. And I think he learned his lesson from a PR standpoint, where it's even more egregious to come out after a game like that where you outshot 2-1. And you're preaching team defense. They didn't play defense, Anthony. I'm sorry to break it to you, and that's the fucking issue with this team. I'm a big Stolarz guy. I like his presence. I like how big he is. I like, everything I just mentioned. I like that he's a leader. I like that he's not scared to talk about it in the media. A lot of guys would just press it in, and I don't think that's good for you either. It's been unfortunate the way things have gone down for him, but I will say, along the lines we just said about Easton Cowan, I think it's important as Stolarz enters his new contract that they have him feeling positive and confident. And I think he, again, is proving that when healthy and playing his way and playing the way he can be, he's a really good goaltender in this league. I mean, to expect he's going to be a top 5 guy the way he was last year, probably not. But, man, his second efforts are strong, and he makes some big-time saves. And I think he's a massive X factor because he can play the puck with some of the best in the league. So I'm a big Anthony Stolarz guy. I actually like him more than Joseph Woll. And if you have to make that decision this summer, I think Joseph Woll is the guy I'm moving and not Anthony Stolarz.
I would kind of disagree with you, I think, because of age is the one thing. And if you just compare the two of them and injuries are, let's say they're basically similar in wash, my personal preference would be to keep Joseph Woll.
Why not trade both, Zach?
Well, here's what I was going to give you as the flip side of this. You find a way to get a huge package on Joseph Woll, something that is going to be more than what you could get for Anthony Stolarz in general, just because what I just outlined, people are also going to realize. There's a lot of people who are smarter than I am, who are in NHL front offices, go figure, but they're out there and looking at it and recognizing he is the older one. Joseph Woll is younger. He's probably a little more technically sound. Maybe he could be the guy to come in here and help, and that's the guy they take a swing on. You keep Anthony Stolarz around, you let him mentor Dennis Hildeby, and then you find a way that you move on from him after the fact. You continue to graduate him through, and you get Akhtiamov here in the future, and then that is your goalie tandem going forward. I don't think that's a horrible idea, but it just ultimately depends on the direction of the franchise and what Keith Pelly and MLSE want them to be doing next season and the coming seasons after that. And to this point, Nick, we got no fucking clue. It seems like they're willing to reset a little bit. Maybe they're not willing to reset as much as some people would like. Some people want them to rebuild. Then they want to compete. I don't know. I don't know what's happening, but I think that's a big piece of the goalie conversation. Okay. Well, do you have anything else to add there? Sorry.
No, I was just going to say that was my reasoning for moving Stolarz, or excuse me, for moving Woll over Stolarz. It's just everything you just mentioned. He's younger. I think there's a higher ceiling. And on top of that, Stolarz is coming off a disappointing season. Having said that, I mean, I'm always careful to wonder what opposing teams and fan bases feel and think about specific Leafs players. Like Joseph Woll's never there. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. He's had a good run where he's been around for 2 months, but we all know at some point in time it's going to happen again where he's not available to this team. And you can make that case for every goal in this league, by the way. I'm not just attaching this to Joseph Woll. It's a league-wide situation. Guys can't stay in the crease. I mean, that guy, Freddie Anderson, Carolina, is allergic to that crease. We know that by now. So it's not a Joseph Woll thing, but I'm just more so curious to know what that value would look like from the outside. And it's not going to happen between now and Friday. Teams very rarely pick up goaltenders at the deadline. Off the top of my head, Ryan Miller, Dwayne Rollison back in 2006. Like, contenders are not trading for goalies. If you're trading for a goalie right now, chances are you're probably not in a good spot in the standings. So that's the key. But maybe Vegas wakes up. Maybe Binnington's available. Maybe Montreal looks up at a potential deal here. But that's the way I sort of handicap the crease right now moving into the summer. There's going to be a lot of conversation because of the waiver eligibility or lack thereof, for a Hildeby. But I think they got to be smart with the way they attack this for sure.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I think there has to be some type of foresight, more foresight than they've shown, I guess, even into this season and the last 2 seasons when it comes to the goalie predicament that you're going to end up with in the summer here, because you're going to look at Dennis Hildeby's coming up. All 3 guys can't go on waivers. How do you handle this? A decision's going to need to be made. Just a reminder to people here, I did put a poll up in the chat right now. Who would you rather trade? Stolarz, Wall, both, or neither? All 4 options in there. So get your votes in. Let us know. I'll recap this when Nick gets off the show here. And as well, if you are watching, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe here to the channel, Leafs Nation 401 right here on YouTube. I don't want to keep you forever, Nick, but I do want to get some trade deadline thoughts, because this will be the last time I talk to you here on a show before we get there. So let's go through some things. Let's start with the news that we saw. We talked about the Edmonton situation, Jason Dickinson going from Chicago to Edmonton. That one worried me just from the sense of there goes the Oilers' need for that role that you were looking at having 2 guys available to them, whether it was Scott Laughton or Nick Waugh. Both of them were available. Both of them have good contracts. Both of them you could have retained on, and both you think could fill a third-line center position. I think that kind of goes off the table a little bit with Jason Dickinson going there. And then immediately following that, Frank Saravalli puts out there that the asking price, according to his sources, for a Nick Waugh is a first-round pick and a prospect for no retention. What did you make of that news?
I was like, was it the same Nicolas Waugh that we watched this year that I've noticed about 4 shifts? Jokes aside, I understand it. I think if you want to trade anybody, you got to have an expectation for what you're looking for in return. But if that seriously is what the Leafs are looking for, Nick Waugh is going to be a Leaf at 3:01 p.m. Eastern time on Friday. Again, there's no issue with it. He's got 1 year left in his deal at $3 million. I mean, there's no pressing need to trade Nicolas Waugh. So if you don't get what you're asking for, I mean, the other place my head went is maybe they could make this trade, get a first in the prospect, and the Leafs PR-wise can turn around and see, hey, look, we got a first plus for Mitch Marner in a sign and trade. Like, I don't know. That's ultimately where my head went right away. But I think it's okay to have these expectations, and it just shows me that they're probably not going to move off this guy right now, which is fine. I think you go into next year, you hope that Nicolas Waugh has a bounce back year, because let's call a spade a spade. He wasn't very good in year 1 for the Maple Leafs. Contract year, motivated by money. Maybe you spice him up a bit, put some butter on that bread, and then come next year's trade deadline, you move him for pretty good assets that are close to that.
That was kind of the same vibe that I had gotten seeing that report and seeing the Oilers trade take place there, was that it feels more and more likely by each passing minute here that the Maple Leafs are going to end up retaining more guys than they are trading in terms of the guys that could be available for a trade in general. And that was kind of where I was at on the Nick Waugh news that came out here today. I respect the fact that they've set some type of price and it's a high one and they're trying to hold it to that and they want to get that in return. I don't mind returning back a first round pick and a prospect, Nick Waugh aside. You know, if you're going to move any of these guys, if that's what you're getting back, as long as the prospect is some guy that you're amateur scouting has at least identified as a guy who's going to be able to push through here soon. You know, I look at replicating that kind of trade that you made for Brandon Carlo, where it's Fraser Minton, who's now a full-time NHL player, right? If you can get a guy who's going to break through, I looked at the Oilers and thought that could have been a fit. You know, Isaac Howard, Matt Savoy, you talk about Quinn Hudson that's in there, those kinds of guys who could be ready to take a step. Those are the pieces that I look at, but it's interesting. I'll ask.
I would just add, it's not a good time to trade Nicolas Waugh. Like it's one thing to have this expectation that I want a first in the prospect. Like who the fuck are they kidding? Who are they fooling? Like this guy's barely on the third line. I'm sort of disappointed that I presented this idea to our listeners and followers last summer that Nicolas Waugh was one hell of a player and that he was a guy who'd always fill in on the top line when guys got hurt. He was a Swiss Army knife for the Vegas Golden Knights and winning the Stanley Cup a couple years ago. But he's been a massive disappointment. He's a guy who's got that big caboose, the big frame, and he just doesn't utilize it. And he just goes missing way too often. I mean, not to strip on and rip on this guy too much, but I think it's unfair to expect that type of return. Other teams watch this team too, by the way.
Yeah, the only thing I wonder about it, and it kind of goes for all the players that you have, and it's kind of starting to be my question. You talk about the defense that was not played here tonight and the structure that they've kind of had all season long, and the fact that they just give up shots like nobody's business. Is what would some of these guys look like in a different deployment, a different system, a different situation, and if somebody else recognizes that that's available? It just scares me a little bit looking at it and being like, well, does that diminish their value in terms of what you had here this season? But I do think Nick Waugh is a very useful player to somebody and would make a difference. But again, if you're not going to get any type of value back, what's the point of trading the guy? If you're just picking up a 3rd round pick, like what the fuck are you doing, kind of thing. I want to ask you about the flip side of this, because Dave was on your show here today, and he's joined the sheet a couple of times, and each time I've heard him talk about it, he's kind of brought up this idea a little bit, whether just loosely. There wasn't really anybody that was named in particular, and I had asked him actually on Leafs Morning Take the one day, but what do you make of the idea of the Maple Leafs? I want to word this carefully, not being a buyer, but adding. And what I mean by that is there are teams with pieces out there right now that are willing to get off of their pieces. And you look around the league, and we're talking about it being a buyer's market, looking at all the teams selling, looking at the abundance of picks, players in some of these teams that they're just like, we have too many of this, or we have these guys and we're not that good. We're willing to get off of centers or right-handed defensemen. What do you think about the idea of the Maple Leafs going out there and coming away from Friday having picked up NHL players? Do you think that's possible? Do you think that's something they're looking to do? And would you be accepting of that as a Leafs fan? I know you are an analyst, and a very good one at that, Nick, but I know you are a Leafs fan as well. So what would you make of that if that's what happens by the end of the day on Friday?
I think it's an interesting conundrum, because you talk about it being a buyer's market, so why not buy? I mean, you're not going to make the playoffs this year, but if you can get somebody that helps you down the road for the next couple of years and it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg, I think you have to do that business. And yeah, I'm sure that's what they're looking at behind the scenes. I'm getting a little annoyed that they're attached to the likes of Robert Thomas and some of these bigger fish. I don't see any pathway whatsoever where they're going to be involved in some of these bigger names. But I think if there's one GM who does his due diligence on what the price tag would be, it is Brad Treliving, whether it's Nazem Kadri or Robert Thomas or Colton Parayko or anybody else for that matter. But I think it's a unique sort of idea that you bring to the table, because it's a year where it's a buyer's market and the prices aren't as inflated as maybe in the past. So maybe you do some business and don't wait for the summer. So I think for sure, if you can add somebody and it doesn't cost you an arm and a leg, and yeah, maybe picks are involved, but I think you can justify it to the fan base and the media and people around the team that, hey, this move makes a lot of sense. I think people honestly would understand. I think it's just more so about the price tag attached to some of these moves, right?
Colorado Rockies 1976 in the chat says, wait until Tree breaks the news he's acquired Mika Zibanejad. But no, I agree with you. And like, I want to make it very clear to people in the chat, I'm not suggesting, and Nick's not suggesting either, that the Leafs should be buyers. Let's like quote, air quote on that one, buyers, where it's like, hey, we're going in, let's go and add and get better this season. I think if you're going to go and find somebody from some other team where they're looking to move off of pieces and they've got a guy who can play in your top six, and you've been looking for a guy who can play in your top six, and you can find that guy out there right now, why not? You know, we just talked about the abundance of centers that are available, and this is me kind of getting ahead of myself, so I want to be careful with it a little bit, but John Tavares is not a second-line center anymore. He's just not. He's too old, and now you're going to go into next season, and he's going to be even slower, and he's going to be even older. I think he's a really good player. I think his cap hit is very palatable, but he's older. So now you push him down your lineup. You're looking for a top six. You're looking for a second-line center going into next year. Who's out there? Who can you find? What can you afford? What if somebody out there is willing to move off of a guy and you can get them and in this season? I don't think it's a bad idea. I also don't mind the idea of this guy didn't work here. We'll give him to you and take a guy that didn't work for you. Let's try a swap. I don't mind that, especially if teams are getting horny here right now. Final thing I'm going to ask you before I let you go, Nick. I know you guys have a show tomorrow, and we'll continue to tee things up here for the trade deadline. So, final thing. We saw McMahon, Lawton, and OEL scratched for this game here tonight. If you were to guess, and I'll keep Nick Waugh out of the conversation because I'm kind of leaning more towards you, especially given the price tag we saw put out there on it. So if it's just between if it's just between Lawton, OEL, and McMahon, how many, if any, of those three guys are still Toronto Maple Leafs by 3:01 Eastern time on Friday?
At best, I say one. OEL. I don't get the sense like a lot of teams are going to be involved in that front. And if what we're hearing is correct on Nicolas Waugh, that they want a first and a prospect, what do you think they want for Oliver Ekman-Larsson? Yeah. I think this is a complete smokescreen. I don't know. The more I think about it, I'm like, what the hell are they asking for OEL? I just don't think now is the time to trade OEL, especially if you think you have this crazy vision in your world. If you're the Maple Leafs, say you're going to compete for a playoff spot and make some hay in the playoffs next year, how are you replacing somebody like OEL? Unless that trade offer is ridiculous and it's a first plus, and you're getting so much value, you'd be stupid to pass up on it. I don't think now's the time to make that trade. I think you revisit it maybe in the summer, maybe even next year's trade deadline depending, I should say, on the way the season goes. So to answer your question, I think McMahon's going. He's a UFA. You got to move him. Lawton's going. He's a UFA. You got to move him. I'm still in that world. If these guys badly want to be Maple Leafs the way they say they do and the way that's out there, I'll talk to you on July 1. If you re-sign with your team, congratulations. But hey, Scott Lawton specifically, you're an Oakville boy. Do a job here, man. Go out there, do a 2-3 month trial with a team, try to win a cup, circle back. You're giving this organization assets. Exactly it. I mean, I know it rarely happens. It rarely happens that way, but that's the mentality. The Leafs have to be in a mode where they're getting some assets here because they have absolutely nothing. Like all these convos about these marquee players. It's unfortunate that the Leafs didn't keep. Well, I wouldn't even phrase it this way. Like last year happened, they had to go all in. It was Marner's last year. At the time, we thought the Carlo edition was great. We liked the Lawton edition. But imagine the Leafs were buyers in this market, what they could have done, especially with the price tags, the way they're affiliated to some guys. Like a guy will dream. We will dream, but a far memory now.
Okay, actually, rapid fire here. I'm going to ask you. You don't, whatever you want to answer, however you want to answer. By the end of the deadline, is Morgan Rielly still a Maple Leaf?
Yes. Yeah, I from everything I gather, the Morgan Rielly conversation will be had. And I don't understand it. Like, why not just have that conversation now? I just don't know how many suitors are involved, but I think Morgan Rielly's likely to go into the summer. And, it's interesting, too, talking to a few people, there's this perception out there that the Maple Leafs will have to eat money in a Morgan Rielly trade. I'm not sold on that just yet. I think somebody's got to step up. But, for instance, San Jose's got 2 guys signed going into next season. They've needed a power play quarterback for since Brent Burns left, since Carlson left. And I think Riley's a guy who could fit in that system, play with a Celebrini. So maybe you pluck a guy in the top 9 off that roster and do a 1-for-1 for Morgan Rielly. But no, I don't see Rielly moving between now and Friday.
Is Calle Jarnkrok moved?
No. I think today proved that nobody wants this guy. Again, he's a good pro and he's been a good player in this league. But if you're playing Calle Jarnkrok when you're sitting half your lineup, it tells me nothing's close. And this guy's been available since last summer and nobody's acquired him. I just don't view any contender being like, we have to get Calle Jarnkrok to be a guy who eats popcorn in our press box. There's far better options. Like I'd rather have a guy who's like a fringe guy on any contending team, like an AHLer with motivation to compete and play in the Stanley Cup playoffs at the NHL level.
Okay, and last one, are any goalies moved?
I say no. Like if we're trying to handicap what the Maple Leafs do, I think McMahon's gone. I think Lawton's gone, and I think Simone Benoit's gone. Like, those are my three guys that I think are going. Simone Benoit is a rugged defenseman. We saw how he played in the postseason last year. He hasn't scored in 71 games, by the way. I don't think he's scored since that Ottawa series. He was a fucking hero in that series. We were calling him Simone Orr, Bobby Orr. Like, it's so, so annoying and so frustrating the way this season has gone. But I think Benoit's a guy, a team will look at him and be, hey, he can be a good 6 or 7 guy for us and bring that pugnacity, if you will. There you go, Zach. He'll bring something to the blue line. I think he'll go for maybe a 4th or a 5th, but I think they'll make that move.
All right, Nick, I appreciate the time from you here tonight. Great stuff, as always. What do you got coming up on Leafs Morning Take tomorrow?
Yeah, we're revisiting that conversation with Brian Burke, who wasn't able to make it on the Monday edition of Leafs Morning Take. So I've rescheduled him for tomorrow. Perfect timing. I put him on Monday because I wanted to tee up the week. Well, the fucking Leafs have done nothing. So the fingers crossed nothing has happened tomorrow at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time when Burkey joins us. And I just want his candid thoughts on where this franchise is at right now. And he's going to bring it. You guys have him on the sheet every week. So looking forward to Brian Burke tomorrow. We'll tee up the game here against the Rangers. Nobody cares about that. Joseph Woll will start, and it's the final game prior to the deadline. So we'll see what happens here, bud.
All right, Nick. Thanks as always. We'll see you tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. Eastern time for Leafs Morning Take. Yeah.
How does that make you feel?
For those who don't know, Nick has a picture of Prague printed out behind him.
Look at that.
Prague joined me on Saturday night, and we had a nice conversation. It was
civil.
It was
Are you guys civil now?
It was friendly. It was a decent one on Saturday, but it was like 1 a.m. I was like, all right, you got to get out of here, man. I've been here for 3 hours, so. The tank commander, Nick Alberga, the tank commander.
Yeah, man. These are dull times, man. It's like watching the game tonight. Like the last couple of years doing our shows, you can like sort of look forward to something and be like, oh, I can't wait for the playoffs. Like all year, you're just waiting for game 1 of the playoffs. There's nothing to look forward to now. Like even I love going to the draft. I don't even want to go this year. I know you guys are probably going. Like I have no interest in going to fucking Buffalo to watch a draft again. So that's something you can't even look forward to. Like I'm just more interested to see what they do by Friday. They're going to take a long nap. I'm going to hibernate like a bear. And then July 1, we're going to see what happens. There's absolutely no market. There's no good players out there. So we'll talk on July 1.
Yeah, I mean,
this is
the
great.
other
They
thing
got all
too,
this cap space, man.
the other thing too, by the way, is like we can't even look forward to the fucking trade deadline because it's not even a market that's in our favor. Like it's the 1 year. It's like most normal franchises have a bad season and they're like, well, let's at least see what we can get back for some of our guys. We'll get back some picks and prospects, and we're just like, no, yeah, like Boston goes out there, gets back Fraser Minton, and now they've
Marchand
got
deal.
Yeah, the Marchand deal. And no, not us, not here in Toronto. We don't get nice things. All right, Nick, thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. And I think we'll have some bigger fish to fry conversations over the next couple months. If you catch my drift, I don't know if you caught Leafs Morning Take today and what Aaron Ward had to say about 2 specific players, one being the captain of the Maple Leafs, who hard launched today, by the way. Congratulations to EM34, big hard launch. Tate McRae and Jack Hughes hard launched in the same day, stealing their thunder. Thanks, Zach. See you later. Bye.
Thanks, Nick. There you go. I did see that. Matthews just immediately gets upstaged by Jack Hughes and his pop star girlfriend, Tate McRae. Good for him. Still 600 plus people watching here tonight. We've still got a bunch of things to do. We're going to have Mike in Buffalo jump on here in a moment to give his thoughts on tonight's game and what the Maple Leafs have not done yet, some of the news that we've heard come out around this team. So I want to get his thoughts ahead of the trade deadline. We'll tee up what could happen on Friday. So Mike and Buffalo will be here in a moment or two as well. We're going to get to callers to wrap up the show. I think at this point we're about 45 minutes in. It's 10:30. We'll go as long as we need to here on the postgame. I know Leafs Nation is restless. They're antsy. They're ready for the trade deadline to... I guess at this point, they're ready for Friday to come because it feels like trades aren't going to come today, the rest of the night here tonight or tomorrow. So everyone's just waiting and seeing if Brad will pick up the phone by Friday. And at this point, I wonder if he's too busy getting medical attention on his toe because he's spent the last 6 months kicking tires. He needs some assistance. He needs to get that worked on here before the deadline. But nonetheless, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe here to the channel, Leafs Nation 401 as well. Check us out on all podcasting platforms, wherever you get your podcast, Leafs Nation 401, or the Leafs Nation After Dark, the Leafs Nation 401 right here on YouTube. With that, let's go to our next guest. Looking forward to hearing what he has to say about, I keep trying to tee it up and saying like the moves that will happen on Friday, but as Nick outlined it, I'm kind of in line with him on the moves that may not happen on Friday. Let's welcome from the Hockey Hot Stove, Mike in Buffalo, covering all things Maple Leafs over there at the Hockey Hot Stove. Mike, what's up tonight?
Good evening, Zach. I don't even want to bother talking about this game other than the fact that Anthony Stolarz has proven he was good at hockey tonight, but shootouts, he sucks. And that's 2 games in a row where, Zegras and Mishkov made him look silly. And then tonight, it was Cotter and Bratt. Clearly, I think all 4 of them went glove side on him.
Yeah.
Went glove hand.
That's what I was going to say. You know how in baseball they match up pitchers and hitters because they're like, oh, this guy can't face the lefty, he can't face the righty. We got to put this guy out there for this situation, whatever. It's like if you go to a shootout against Anthony Stolarz, find whatever guy you have in your lineup that has forehand, backhand to the glove side and is a left-hand shot in their arsenal, and you're bound to go 2 for 2, maybe 3 for 3, because that move seems to be his kryptonite. You get a little drop shoulder on the forehand, he's down, he's gone. Go to the backhand and you've got him on the glove side. That seemed to be the move that was getting him. Now, mind you, Zegras didn't go forehand, backhand, but he did rip up on the glove side on Anthony Stolarz. So yeah, that was a little bit tough to see Mike, for sure.
And I can't remember what year it was, but when Cujo made his return to Toronto, and I think the starter was Vesa Toskala. I think it was Paul Maurice, who was the coach, and he yanked Toskala in the shootout and put in a cold Cujo to say, like, as a relief pitcher, and he got burned on a thing on shot. So that doesn't work. But Vesa Toskala was so bad on breakaways that they decided they had to use a relief pitcher. I don't know whether you want to do that with Joseph Wall when it comes to Stolarz, but I like Nick a lot, and I like a lot of his opinions. I couldn't disagree with him more on the goaltending situation. If you find anybody to take Anthony Stolarz, I'll drive him to Pearson. Give me a break. That 4-year contract, and it's not because he's not a good goaltender. It's because he puts 3 good games together and then he gets hurt. The guy has got knees of jelly, and you sign him to a 4-year deal. I don't care what the AAV is. Now, you could say, well, if he gets hurt again, you just put him on LTIR, but you can't open up the cap space unless you put him on season-ending LTIR. So, that benefit is gone because of the new CBA. So if I get a chance to trade Anthony and I think they have to trade one of the 2 goalies, I don't trade Joseph Wall. No way. I would trade Stolarz in a second. And I think there are teams out there like Los Angeles with an aging Darcy Kemper, like Utah with Vanacek is your backup behind Vanelka, and Vegas. I'm sorry, I'm not impressed with Akira Schmid or Aiden Hill. They could definitely, and Carter Hart, he must be hurt because I haven't seen him in a while. So they need a goaltender, and they always find a way. So see you, Anthony. If you can get rid of him and get a 7th round pick for him, I'll take him.
So that's the one thing that hasn't been brought up as much by anybody, outside of, I guess, really a select few here. You just brought it up. I've talked about it a little bit. The boys have talked about it a little bit on Leafs Morning Take, but we talk about the buyer's market and the abundance of what's out there. So we can talk about centers. There's a lot of centers out there. Right-handed defensemen. There's a lot of right-handed defensemen out there. So teams aren't looking for those. The Leafs aren't necessarily gifted with having a ton of right-handed defensemen, but centers is what they are trying to move. Whether it's Waugh, if it's Lawton, whatever, that's what they're trying to move off of. So the value's getting knocked down on those guys. Okay, is what it is. Well, what do you have an abundance of? And as a matter of fact, as you kind of just pointed out there, what do you need to get rid of when you're looking at next season? Not really right now, but next season, it's a goalie. And that's something that there's a few different teams out there that are looking for. And so that's what I would think. The only thing that I'm not going to disagree with you on, but my counterpoint to it for a pitch about Joseph Woll would be, I think the packages for each guy, and maybe this is my own delusion, but my impression would be the package for each guy would be different. Maybe you get somebody who's more game ready in a deal with a Joseph Woll, just because he is the younger option. He's probably the less injury prone option of the two if you were to weigh things out. You know, it's like the guy who gets injured a lot and the guy who gets injured almost a lot between the two of them. But if you look at the two, maybe he's the one who can bring you back someone who's closer to being ready to play in the NHL, maybe steps in your lineup next year. And if you're going to get back a significant piece for that, I would explore it. But yeah, goaltending is something I for sure am looking at here at this deadline, especially considering the teams you just mentioned. You know, they're out there looking for that guy who could come in and help them. The Leafs might have that answer.
Yeah, I mean, if you're putting Woll in a package to say St. Louis in a deal for Jordan Binnington, I mean, that's not a deal for this year because the Leafs are done. But, you know, he's got another year in his contract. I just don't know whether Jordan Binnington is a fit in Toronto with his aggressiveness issues and you know, let's just say, you know, the attention on him in Toronto, I think would be self-destructive. Mm-hmm. Whereas Woll seems to really block that out. You know, I think he's been a good goaltender for them. I think he's been let down by the team in front of him a lot of times. But with the goaltending, it's Stolarz. It's getting rid of the 4 years. I don't think you're getting a big return for either one of them. It's basically cleaning up Brad Treliving's mess here, whether it's him doing it himself or the next general manager if they fire him. But it's Anthony Stolarz at $3.75 million for 4 more years. That is, to me, untenable. So if you get anything for him, even if you have to take a contract back, that's something I would explore.
Let me ask you about this. There was 3 guys scratched today. Mm-hmm. McMahon, OEL, Lawton. I poked around as well as Nick did there, and I'm sure you asked around as well about what was going on. And by all accounts, there was nothing imminent coming up for these 3 guys. And then Elliot Friedman went out and confirmed that here just 30 minutes ago while the show's been going on. He said, says nothing is imminent on all 3 players the Leafs scratched tonight. It was more so about bubble wrapping them. The teams he mentioned include McMahon, and he said there was a whole bunch of teams interested in McMahon. Lawton was linked to Colorado. They were interested in Scott Lawton, which I think makes a lot of sense. Oliver Ekman-Larsson linked to Detroit and Boston. Mike, that's the one team after last year I would just be saying, no thank you. I see the call come in from Don Sweeney. I am declining the call. I don't even bother picking it up. I don't even want anything to do with that because something is scary about dealing with Boston for me right now.
I get it, but okay, so let's go through them one at a time. Yeah. Lawton, the report that Cervelli put out about the asking price for Nick Waugh. If they're trading Scott Lawton, and I wrote about this at Hockey Hot Stove a couple weeks ago. If they're trading Scott Lawton, they're keeping Nick Waugh because they'll trade one of them. If they got Lawton under contract, then I think they'd be trading Waugh, and I think the price would be a little bit less. But since they're going to trade Lawton, they're asking for a lot for Waugh. They're not going to trade both of them. Now, I agree with you. John Tavares cannot be the second-line center for this team next year. John Tavares should be shifted to left wing where he has played internationally before. And I think, you know, with his lack of speed now, I think he can play the left side with a speedier center and either Domi or Nylander. I think that works. The difficult thing is you have to find that second line center, and that'll be something that whoever the GM is does during the summer. OEL, I don't care about trading him to Boston. I don't care about trading him to Detroit. I care about what they get back. Boston has got 2 first-round picks. They've got their own, and they've got ours.
Yeah, they've got the juicy one. Yeah.
Now, it's a pipe dream to think that the Leafs could get their own pick back.
Mm-hmm.
They might be able to get Boston's because Boston's probably going to make the playoffs. So if you could get a 2026 first-round pick in a deal, and maybe a prospect, because he's got 2 years of term, and I would do that deal, and I wouldn't care what he does. I mean, he could light it up there, fine. It's the return, and Detroit, I believe, has their first round pick as well, and they have a boatload of prospects. So, if it's that type of deal, fine. I mean, I look at what right now, what the Leafs have in terms of the draft next year: a 3, a 5, or 2026, a 3, a 5, and a 6. What do they have the following year? A 2, a 4, a 5, 2 6, and a 7. So they don't have their first round pick the next 2 years. They don't have a second round pick next this upcoming draft, and they don't have a third round pick in the following draft. You need to restock the kitchen. Mm-hmm. You need to eliminate those holes. You need to give your amateur scouting the ability to draft players. And if you look at some of the players that they've drafted over the last couple of years, deeper, like Holinka, like Koblar, they're doing better than expected. I mean, they were second round picks or fifth round picks. They're doing pretty good. Give your amateur scouting staff bullets in the chamber to have an opportunity to draft players. Right now, you're spending a ton of money on scouting, and you got no damn picks to pick. So that's where now, so Ekman Larson, I think if they can get a first round pick, even if it's conditional, be my guest. And Bobby McMahon, I don't care. Do not play these guys tomorrow against the Rangers. Put them in bubble wrap again, and then make the best deal on Friday morning. Maybe I don't want to wait until like 2:00 for them to make these deals, because honestly, then you're up against the wall, and then you lose leverage. Right now, I think you need to make the move sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and I mean, I see people, you brought it up. I just want to also point this out to people. But people in the chat saying Wes Clark is gone. He's gone. They're not going to find that guy. Well, the Maple Leafs brought in Mark Leach, who was a significant part of the Dallas scouting operation. He's not the lead guy. That's Joe McDonnell, who's the head of amateur scouting for the Dallas Stars. He's still in Dallas, but Mark Leach comes in here. He was one of the guys who was a part of identifying, some of these guys they've got coming through right now. I don't know what weight to put on it here, Mike, to be completely honest. I don't know the ins and outs of that, but you look at the guys they've drafted and brought through, they've continued to supplement what they've had in, maybe the wrong way to put it is an older team, but a more veteran team. You've kept Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin and those kinds of guys, and you've supplemented them with younger pieces around them who can either bring back value, or whether it's in a trade, or they can actually step into your lineup, i.e. Wyatt Johnson, Maverick Bourque, Leon Bischel, Miro Heiskanen is a guy they drafted, bring in Jason Robertson. He's a part of that. He's a part of that drafting that took place. So I would lean towards trusting that guy to be able to find the pieces, but as you just mentioned, they don't have the picks to do so. And I look at this season, and I think it's paramount to get picks and prospects back here, whether that's Mark Leach identifying prospects who have already been drafted that can come here, and he's going to be a part of that, or if it's going to be him going out and scouting kids who have not yet been drafted, and you're going to draft those players. Doesn't matter to me, but you need to find ways to bring that back into this team, because you are old, you are slow, you are aging rapidly. You need to find a way to get younger, faster, and prepare for the future. The other part of it, which people have pushed back on me on, Mike, and I keep trying to remind people, and I don't know, maybe I'm just wrong on this, or maybe people aren't grasping it the same way. I'm not sure which at this point, but you go out and you get picks and prospects back, and people keep saying to me, well, how does that help you next year? Well, the picks and the prospects aren't guys that are going to be ready next season necessarily, but what they might be is something you can use in a trade piece, right? What if you go out and you load back second round picks? We talk about the Robert Thomas sweepstakes, right now, and what that would be worth. Well, Toronto doesn't really have the assets to do that. They have to get unbelievably creative in terms of finding guys lower down or finding picks lower down or years in the future if they want to pull that off. If you go out and you can find first round picks for OEL, for Bobby McMahon, for Scott Lawton, obviously that's on the optimistic side, but you find a way to pull that off, now you've got more in the cupboard to go and get the guy. You want a top 6 next year? He's not coming up in free agency. Like, the big guy is going to be Alex Tuch. Nick Schmaltz, I think, might demand a little bit more than what he's worth coming into next season. Is he a guy you want to rely upon coming off the season that he's having right now to just continue to replicate that or build at this point in his career? Maybe not. Maybe he's not the guy you want to trust. I do like Nick Schmaltz, but is putting all your eggs in that basket of a top 6 guy? Maybe not. So maybe you need to find him in a trade. That allows you to have the pieces to go and make those trades because the season's over. We know that. So what the fuck does it matter from what happens today till the end of the year? Reload the cupboards, get yourself ready to have assets that you can utilize going forward.
Now, one opportunity that nobody has mentioned yet, and I think it's possible, and it's not going to be a great return, but, we saw Chris Tanev, it was announced that he had the core muscle surgery and he's out for the remainder of the season and will be back by training camp in September. The Leafs haven't done it yet, but they can put him on season-ending LTIR, and that will open up $4.5 million of cap space. Okay, how about, like a lot of teams are doing, like you were mentioning, taking on a player that is under contract for next year or even under contract for this year that a team is looking to dump, like Mangiapane. I mean, Mangiapane had another year, but there are teams that are looking to move out guys who are rentals just to clear their cap space so they can add something. That might be worth a 3rd or 4th round pick, something like that, depending on the salary of the player. But that's a 3rd or 4th round pick that you don't have. So use that space for the last 20 games. And, if a team is looking to jettison a player, that's how you need to think outside the box. That's what you have to do. Again, like Leach has only been in control of the Leafs draft for just this last year. Koblar is having a good year in the SHL as an 18-year-old. Tyler Hopkins is having a good year with first with Kingston and Guelph, and Harry Nancy is doing pretty decent. I don't know a ton about these players, but I'm tracking what they're doing, and they're doing well. So
Miroslav Holinka too.
And Holinka was last year, and Victor Johansson made Sweden the World Junior team, and we know Danford. There's a possibility Ben Danford makes the NHL as a 20-year-old next year, based on the way that the Leafs defense is. So, there are players there, and I swear to God that after 3 p.m. on Friday, one of the things you have to look out for is Easton Cowan being sent down to the American Hockey League as a paper transaction to be on the AHL roster before 3 p.m. so he can go down and play in the Calder Cup playoffs if the Marlies make the playoffs. They need to do that. If they don't do that, then he finishes out the regular season and he sits in mothballs while they're playing playoff games. But what they also need to do, if they're clearing out these players, you need to call up Quillen. You need to call up Villeneuve. You need to call up Luke Hames and give them an opportunity to play. And if Craig Berube, tonight he played him 17 minutes. If you call up these guys and you play him 8 minutes, if I'm Brad Treliving, I walk into the locker room and I fire his ass because they need to find out whether these players have anything and can play in the league, because that makes them adjust their plan for the summer. They need to find out whether these players can play in the NHL, and it also attracts other undrafted college free agents to come to Toronto and play with Austin Matthews. If you give these guys an opportunity, that's a really good way of showing, hey, you could make the NHL if you sign with us.
That is a good point. That's one thing that I've kind of been harping on here a little bit is the treatment of the players that you have is not a very good recruiting pitch to players who are out there that you could find, especially the college kids who control their own destiny a little bit more, whether they're undrafted or the flip side, which people can kind of forget here, OHL kids, CHL kids, they have the opportunity to do this, but it's a little bit different. Not in terms of the rules around it, but just how they choose to operate typically is the college kids will just stay at college and then they won't re-sign. A lot more frequently you see CHL kids will sign with their teams that draft them and then will end up going on and playing for the Marlies or playing for the AHL team and then figuring it out from there. But it's a lot more common that NCAA kids will choose their destiny. You get drafted by a team, that's great. You spend the next 2 seasons playing in the NCAA. You finish out your 2 seasons. You're a college free agent. You look at it and you say, I remember when Jacob Quillen was super highly touted coming out of here, and he went and signed with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and Craig Berube played him for 6 minutes a night in 3 games in the season, and then he got sent back down to the Marlies, played unreal, and then ended up leaving, going somewhere else, and having success. I'm not going to choose that path. It's a very plausible path for these guys to take if that comes up. So it's a very good point. And the other part of it, even beyond that, is just, which you kind of touched on a little bit, but just what do you have? Like, what do you have? We don't know. We don't know what Luke Hames looks like in NHL action. I see again here today, he scores another goal. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's 6 goals in his last 5 games. Like, this is a guy who's finding the back of the net there. He's finding some confidence. He's playing against men. It doesn't translate directly to the NHL, but a lot of times you start to figure that out. You can take that into the NHL. Now all of a sudden you put him with William Nylander and Austin Matthews or whatever in a top 6 role. I'm not saying that Luke Hames is the guy who does it necessarily or that works that way, but as a generic example, he jumps up, plays top 6, and you're like, whoa. It's the same thing with Easton Cowan to an extent here tonight, Mike. I thought he looked pretty good tonight. Did he make some dumb decisions? Yes. Did he get knocked off the puck a few times? Yes. But you know what he is? He's a young kid who's physically maturing, mentally maturing, and he probably had his confidence knocked a little bit over the last 2 months here under the usage that Craig Berube has used him in. You now put him 17 minutes, you play him with Austin Matthews and William Nylander, and he looks like a very different player. So you get these guys in there, you give them different opportunities, you get different looks of them. It can change this drastically about how you look at next season, because you might just have young kids in your lineup that you just didn't even realize, and your need to go and acquire certain pieces next season is diminished because you have other guys that were already here who can fill out your lineup a little bit.
Yeah, let him make his mistakes in the last quarter of this season rather than making them in the first quarter of next season. Play, not saying play him to death, but play him 16, 17 minutes a night and coach him. Like, okay, you don't do that, Easton. You do this. Okay, but I look at it again. I go back to these players. Quillen is 23. Villeneuve is 23. Hames is 22. They're not 18-year-olds. They're adults, and they're purportedly pretty good at hockey. So give them an opportunity. Your season is over with. You need an infusion of young talent. This is in your organization. Do it. I mean, instead of playing Kalle Järnkrok, if I get a 7th round pick in 2029 for Kalle Järnkrok, I trade him. It's like, give me anything. I'll eat, and that's the other thing that the Leafs need to do. They have 3 retention slots. Don't be the Buffalo Sabres. Be the Toronto Maple Leafs and use your financial wherewithal to increase the assets that you bring back. Use the retention slots. Now, I don't know about using it for players with term. I mean, I wouldn't retain on OEL because he's a $3.5 million cap hit. That's not time. For 2 more years. I wouldn't retain for him, but I would retain for Lawton. I would retain for McMahon or Stetcher or, maybe Benoit because his AAV is pretty low. I would do that. Anything that increases the assets coming back, do it.
Yeah, and again, to the point, like, you look at the picks and stuff, maybe you only get second round picks or third round picks, but this was tweeted out by Big Head Hockey during the course of the night here tonight. I haven't fact checked the entire thing, but I can remember most of these here. I'm just trying to remember one of them that I just don't remember how this happened, but you can maybe pinpoint this. But the 2020 second round pick, these are picks that were traded away by the Edmonton Oilers since 2020 and have turned into players. Okay, so the 2020 second round pick turned into Brock Faber. The 2021 second round pick turned into Atu Ratu. The 2022 second round pick turned into Lane Hudson. Tanner Molendijk was the 2023 first round pick that they traded away. Vadim Moroz was the 2023 third round pick that they traded away. And the 2024 first round pick they traded ended up being Ben Danford. I don't remember that one, what that trade was. That's the one I don't remember. But
well, they got the Danford pick. I know they got the Easton Cowan pick from Washington in the Rasmus Sandin deal.
Yeah.
Danford, I'm not sure about, but I do know that, it's funny that you mentioned Brock Faber. They traded that second round pick to LA, and then LA drafted Brock Faber and then traded Brock Faber to Minnesota for Kevin Fiala. So, yeah. So, no, I mean, and you could track the picks that the Maple Leafs have traded, and also the decisions that were made at the drafts that still to this day puzzle me. It's like, again, I think I mentioned this when I was on the show before. Lane Hudson was there with the Leafs second round pick. And they took Minton, and I have nothing against Minton. I think he's a good player. I think he's, probably a 20 to 25 goal scorer. He's not the next Patrice Bergeron. Cool your jets, Leafs fans. But he's a good player. Mm-hmm. Lane Hudson was there, and I was at that draft, and I was talking to people who are, draft experts and draft prognosticators, and they're like, yeah, Lane Hudson for Toronto makes all the sense in the world. He's small, he's fast, he's really incredibly skilled. He really fits what the Leafs were looking for, and they pass him and they take a bigger player in Fraser Minton, and then he slips to the end of the second round and he goes to Montreal. And I'm like, because people told me he's going to be really good, but he's small, and look at him now. And that's what it's the decisions that the Leafs make at the draft by trading draft picks for older players, and now it's caught up to them after 9 years of making the playoffs and doing nothing for 7 of them. Mm-hmm. Now they have to sort of recoup and regroup, and they have to do it quickly because, I don't care what a lot of Leaf fans say. I understand their frustration, but this team's got a window, just like the Edmonton Oilers do with Connor McDavid. They've got a window of a couple years with Austin Matthews to convince him to sign again here. Yeah. And I'm telling you, if they don't, then it's rebuild city. And I don't think everybody wants to go through another rebuild, because you're not guaranteed to get a franchise player and a future Hall of Famer, which he is, like Austin Matthews, if you tank and go to the bottom of the first or top of the first round.
Yeah, and the players that you're expecting to be difference makers are coming up in the next 2 drafts. Not saying that there's not going to be any in the 2028 one, but you look at even the guys that you look at the top 3 here right now between McKenna, Stenberg, Verhoff, even beyond that, it's a pretty deep draft that you're going to end up having here. Malhotra ends up in there somewhere. You're loading up on what could be a good draft, and then you go to next year, Landon Dupont, Alexi Joseph, they're all guys that are going to come through. You wait this thing out, you don't handle it properly, you miss that. You miss that window, and you miss those guys who could be pieces that help. And, just tying it back to what I was saying about the Oilers there and the picks that were traded, and what they end up turning into, my point to people, just to kind of make people aware or kind of have people recognize, is that yes, that guy might not be ready right this second, but maybe a year from now, maybe 2 years from now, the guy is ready to step in, because there was a list of NHL players who were in there. There's obviously guys who don't pan out the way you'd expect them to, but there's a list of guys who are in there, and maybe that ends up being part of your sales pitch to Austin Matthews. Or, Mike, maybe what it ends up being is it doesn't work out for Matthews, but Nylander's got term beyond what Matthews' deal looks like. And then you have Nylander here and you have some other guys who can supplement that. And you just need to start to look at how you can fix this thing and load back up here, maybe without having to do a full teardown if that's what you want, the direction you want to go in. And I think getting picks back right now is what would be helpful. So, yeah. We're in an interesting spot as an organization, Mike. That's for sure.
No doubt. And I've said this a few times, and I know that we've had two coaches who have sort of toyed with the idea and then basically abandoned it after like a week into training camp. Maybe your number 2 center is on this roster, and maybe his name is William Nylander because he played center in the SHL. And he played center for a time in the American Hockey League. So, I know he's a scorer. I know he's a 40-goal scorer, but he's also a really good playmaker, and he's fast. And honestly, that changes the entire perspective if you say, okay, William, in the offseason, we want you to play up the middle. Not to say we don't care about your defense, but we care about basically taking away, checking assignments away from Matthews, and maybe they go to you, but you have to have two centers that that are able to play off of each other like Tavares and Matthews have done over the last few years. If you have Nylander as your number 2 center, then you're out there looking for a winger to replace him, and that's hell of a lot easier to do than to go out and get a center. You see what the price is for Robert Thomas, which is absolutely insane. And the Leafs don't have that capital, that draft capital or that prospect capital to be able to make that deal. So maybe out of necessity, you move Nylander to the middle and you say, okay, maybe you're not comfortable, but you have to do this. You've been signed for 8 years. This is what we need out of you, and you're going to play center.
Okay, I want to throw something at you here and just get your thoughts because this was tweeted out and I've kind of loosely thought about it at different times, but it seems like a pretty timely thing to bring up. Kristen Shilton tweeted this out and it's a thought provoker for sure. It goes to the coaching staff and it goes to the management and the disconnect here that I think we're experiencing in Toronto right now. So she tweets out, "All I know is that if Scott Laughton leaves his Leafs tenure without ever being a top 6 player this year for that team, speaks volumes about the disarray happening on Bay Street." I don't even know really what kind of question I want to ask you here, Mike, in this, but just hearing that comment from Kristen Shilton, what are your immediate thoughts?
I like him a lot. I like his motor. I like the fact that he's really good defensively and a good face-off guy and a great penalty killer. He's not a top 6 forward. Now, you could say you didn't give him the opportunity, and I agree with that. You didn't give him more ice time, and limiting him to 8, 9, 10 minutes on the fourth line, I think does him a disservice and does the team a disservice because I think he deserves more time than that. And, had he signed a contract and they traded Nick Waugh, I think he would have been the 3rd line center that he was purported to be when they traded for him, traded a 1st-round pick and Grabyankin for him. Yeah. But they've slotted him as the 4th line center because you've got Matthews, Tavares, and Waugh. He's not a top 6 forward. He's got 8 goals in 43 games. More offense in his game than a 4th liner, but he's a top 9. He's not a top 6. And the only way he plays in the top 6 right now is, are you going to move John Tavares to the wing to play Scott Laughton at 2nd line center? Are you going to put him on the wing, which he's done before? But I don't think it's a good fit. He's not. They're short of a top 6 forward. They're maybe short of 2 top 6 forwards. Scott Laughton is not one of them. There's a better case to be made to have Nick Robertson playing in the top 6 because at least he can score and he's fast. He's bad defensively, but that makes more sense.
Yeah, so the one thing that I think about this, I agree with you, to be clear here before I go into this point, I agree with you. The one thing that I do wonder about, and I tie it back to the disconnect happening, is what the anticipation was from Brad Treliving that Scott Laughton would be and the role that he would play versus what Craig Berube viewed him as. And what I mean is, if Treliving knew that he was trading for a 4th line center, which this is a whole separate kind of conversation, but you bear with me here. If he knows that he's trading for a fourth line center and a guy to play 8, 9, 10 minutes a night and be a penalty killer, do you think that he trades for Scott Laughton and trades Nikita Grabenkin in a first round pick? I have to, it's hindsight and revisionist history, but I have to imagine the answer is no. I think Brad Treliving's made some bad moves, but I think he's smart enough not to do that. I do. You know, even the Brandon Carlo one, was it an overpay? Yeah, it was. But you know what he was expected to do? Be your first line or first pairing right defenseman with Morgan Riley. So that's why they pay for that price. Pay that price for the guy. Did it work? No, but that was the anticipation. And I have to wonder if there's just some significant disconnect that's happening here, because I know people in this market aren't fully sold on Scott Laughton. I personally, I love him. I love him as a player. And maybe top 6 is too high to look at him as, but he was not given a fair shake at any opportunity above a fourth line center, because I thought coming here he was going to be slotted into the third line. He would play 12 to 15 minutes a night. He would get some tough matchups. He would be a guy that could really help you out in that top 9 role. And even that, if the going got tough and you really needed something, or you needed some help or a boost or something somewhere else, maybe he played second line left wing with John Tavares in a pinch spot, you know, rather than him being slotted there permanently. Maybe he was a guy who could get up there and help out in that role, and it never panned out that way, Mike. The amount of times I've done Leafs Nation After Dark this year and even in the playoffs, and I looked at the box score and it was like, well, Scott Laughton played 9 minutes and 20 seconds tonight. It's like, this is a misuse of your assets. It just didn't make sense to me. I could never wrap my head around it. So I just thought it was an interesting point made by Kristen Shilton. I disagree with her about him being like a full-time top 6, but it's a good thought provoker in terms of his usage here and what Brad Treliving thought he was getting versus what Craig Berube utilized him as, because that's a significant overpay for a guy who's just been a fourth-line center for 2 years. It makes me want to bang my head against the wall.
I mean, remember when they acquired him and he was brought in, I mean, all the talk was he's a third line center. He's a third line center. We need a third line center to move Domi to the wing because Domi is so horrendous defensively. And then he comes in and he plays, I think it was 2 or 3 games. And then they moved him to the fourth line. And he didn't settle in really well last year, and he played better in the playoffs, but it was just, you know, it was, I mean, I'm sure after being in Philly for a decade, you know, it was a tough adjustment, even if it's coming home to, you know, his the team that he loved as a youth. But, you know, this year after the foot injury, he's played really well. He's got, like I said, high motor, high energy, good guy in the locker room, all the things they were looking for when they acquired him. I'm sorry, I would have to think that Brad Treliving acquired him because he thought he would be a fit with Berube, because he was in, you know, Berube was around the Flyers. I don't think he was coach anymore, but he was around the Flyers when Laughton was there for a good chunk of time before he went to St. Louis as an assistant and then as the head coach. So he knew Laughton, he knew what he was all about, and okay, that's a good fit. And after Brock Nelson got traded to Colorado, now Laughton on most people's lists was the next rental center, or not even rental. He had another year left in his contract, and you got Philadelphia to retain salary. Part of the return was them retaining half of his salary. But they misused him since they got him. You know, it's like he's not, I don't think he's a fourth line center in the sense that I think he's capable of playing more, but you have a third line center in Nick Waugh, so he has to play fourth line center. Yeah. And it's just not been beneficial. The you know, having more depth, having a better bottom 6, everybody thought was going to be beneficial for this team. And it is slightly better than it was last year, but your top 6 is much, much worse. And that's a bigger problem.
That's a good point. It's a good point. There's nothing the Leafs can do about it right now. It's Wednesday night, March 4th at 11:15 p.m. Eastern Time, Mike. Friday, March 6th at 3:01 or 3 Eastern Time. 3:01 will be beyond the point of return for the end of this season. But Brad Treliving, Craig Berube are still the guys at the head of this thing. Brad, obviously, the general manager. Craig Berube still remains the coach. There's been numerous times this season myself, and I think a lot of Leafs fans thought that has to be it. Saturday's game against the Ottawa Senators, the most recent example for me, where I walked away from that one and thought, I just don't know how Craig Berube rolls out there on Monday night as the head coach still, but he's still here. Does it concern you at all that Craig Berube and Brad Treliving are still the guys running this operation at this point in the season, given the way things have gone, and given the way we expect the rest of this year to go?
It doesn't concern me that Treliving is still there because somebody's got to drive the car. You can't fire him, 5 days before the trade deadline and then hand it over to Brandon Pridham. It's like he's the guy, he's the one. Now I have a problem with his inaction, with the fact that my buddy Steve Dangle has the count of how many days it has been since Brad has made a trade, and it was the Dakota Joshua deal on July 16th. He has not made a trade in 8 months.
He kicks a lot of tires.
Kicked a lot of tires. Who gives a crap? Do something. When this team was still in it, they didn't make a deal to improve themselves. And then they're talking about this pie-in-the-sky bull crap of trading for Dougie Hamilton or trading for Robert Thomas when you weren't in the race. The one thing that people can be thankful for in terms of the Maple Leafs is that they come out of the Olympic break leaving no doubt. They've lost every game. They've checked out on this coach. So, yes, I think they should have fired Berube back in December. I question whether Treliving had the authority to fire him, and they fired Mark Savard because that was all he could do, and maybe they're attached at the hip, and they're both going to go at the end of the year. I don't know. All I know is that Berube, it's a fireable offense if after the deadline he doesn't bids. If he plays Kyle Yarncroke more than the kids who should be up, he should, and let Derek Lalonde finish out the season. You need to his number. What Austin Matthews is. What Matthew Nyes is. And if those players have to get season-ending surgery to correct what problems they have, Nyes' knee or Matthews' shoulder or Nylander's groin, get it done. Get it done early. Because if you lose a bunch of games, you just increase your chances of winning the lottery and getting a top 5 pick. Yep. And, what are you going to do? You're going to give Boston a pick anywhere from 6 to 16.
Yeah.
Okay. There's nothing you can do about it. You traded the first round pick. And you mentioned the Carlo deal. Brandon Carlo was the guy who played with Chara. He played with McAvoy. He played on the top pairing with the Bruins. So, it's just 2020 hindsight, and it's just revisionist history. Oh, well, how could they trade for a crappy right-handed defenseman like Brandon Carlo? Brandon Carlo is a good defenseman. This team plays defense like they're clueless. Yep. This team defensive concept, I don't understand what the hell they're doing. And that's directly applicable to the coach of this team.
That's what I was going to say. I think that one thing Leafs fans are going to recognize once he leaves here is what kind of defenseman Brandon Carlo is. And I'm not trying to put him on some pedestal and say that Brandon Carlo is fucking Cale Makar or Bobby Orr here. That's not what my pitch is to Leafs fans. But I think now that he's been here and we all got so frustrated with what we saw out of the guy here in Toronto, when we watch him go out to some other team, and we watch Brandon Carlo play in a better defensive structure and play with a better partner than Morgan Rielly or somebody that he doesn't have to kind of hold the fort for so much like what Morgan Rielly does for him as his lefty pair. I think we're going to recognize what kind of guy Brandon Carlo is, or what they were looking for in a Brandon Carlo trade. It didn't work out, but I do think that it will work out for him somewhere else if he does end up getting moved. And to the point about shutting these guys down, like, I'm 100% with you here on this one. I've kind of just accepted there's going to be something sickening happening at the end of this season anyways, Mike. Like, I think the only way you could really stomach this and not be too concerned with Boston taking your pick is if you finish anywhere from the 16th pick to like the 11th pick, which you are currently sitting in. But the idea of you catching up to the Columbus or Ottawa right now, it's not too far-fetched, but it feels tough to do when you consider San Jose is ahead of you and they've got 3 more games in hand. Philadelphia, Ottawa, Columbus all have 3 games in hand. Like, it feels like it's going to be tough. You're going to be somewhere from like 6 to 12. It kind of feels like in those picks. So I keep saying it. One of the reasons that you're here right now is because you have Austin Matthews and William Nylander playing and John Tavares and Matthew Nyes. This game tonight was the most evident thing to me that it's time to sit these guys down and end their seasons if you can. Take Austin Matthews, as you just said, end his season here now. Let's get back at it next season. Take your summer, go and get surgery or rehab, whatever you need. Nylander, rest the rest of this. Let's get that groin healthy. Nice, fix your knee, sit. Let's see what happens. It also does something else positive for you, and that it opens up space for other guys to get opportunities. There's 3 guys right there. If you just pick those 3 guys and you shut them down for the rest of this year, Mike, it moves everybody else up, let alone the guys you're trading out. Let's say you move on from Lawton and McMahon. That's now 5 guys. Are you going to be good for the rest of the season? No, but you know what you do? You give Luke Hames and Jacob Quillen and Easton Cowan more opportunities to play in this lineup and see what they can do and see how they are as NHL players. It opens things up. It allows you to bottom out. And it also just helps you get those guys ready for next season because, it's not like the Maple Leafs have gone on the longest runs every year, Mike, but this is going to be the longest reset that they've had in a long time. And Nylander and Matthews in particular are coming off 2 seasons where they've played a lot of hockey in condensed schedules. The 4 Nations and the Olympics have forced the NHL schedules to just be super tight. You're playing every other night. Then you go to these tournaments. 4 Nations, you didn't play that many games, but it was a bunch of games in a short period of time. The Olympics more expanded. You still played a bunch there for Matthews and Nylander a little bit there. Obviously went to the quarterfinals. Shut them down here now around the trade deadline. Give them all the way until September next year, and let's just reset and come back with healthy players.
Yeah, I mean, they're in the mushy middle right now. They're 21st. They're 9 points away from 5th spot, which is Chicago, and that's just as difficult to catch up that way as it is to catch up with Columbus or Boston for a playoff spot. So this is, and Zach, you may be too young to remember this. This is, when Tank Nation was born back in like 2007 or 2008, when they were too good to finish in the bottom 5 with Sundin and Tucker and those players. But but they weren't bad. They weren't bad enough, and they weren't good enough. They're not good enough to make the playoffs, and they weren't bad enough to finish in the bottom 5. And I'm
gonna make you feel old for a second, Mike. I'm gonna make you feel old. I'm sorry, I have to jump in. I do remember that. That's like some of my early memories of the Maple Leafs, and I remember reading about that kind of stuff in the newspaper. I was obsessed with the Maple Leafs, so every time it would come, I would pick up the newspaper and read what was happening, and I knew that was what was going on, so I was vividly aware of the situation taking place. So sorry I had to just jump in there, but continue.
No. And I was calling Leaf Talk with Andy Frost, basically saying, this is Leaf fans at this point right now, if they had their first round pick, they'd be praying that they lose every game. Now, the problem is that they don't have their first round pick and they're losing every game.
Picking up some loser points.
Yeah. I mean, now you could say, well, hey, the Islanders won the lottery last year and they got Schaefer, and the odds are going to be 2 or 3%. So it's not going to. You can't plan on that. But what I'm saying is, right now, you trade who you can trade. You keep the players that are the core group. I don't care what people say. You're not trading Austin Matthews. That's all poppycock. You're not trading Nylander. You're not trading Nyes. You can't trade Tavares. Morgan Rielly. Here's another thing about, and I know, everybody, every time I bring up Morgan Rielly, the chat goes crazy. And it's like, okay, I'm a defender of Morgan Rielly. Yeah. Morgan Rielly's not a top pairing defenseman. At best, he was a number 2 at his peak. That's the reality. He scored 70 points. He was a very good offensive defenseman. He's not, what made him really good was his speed, and he doesn't have that anymore. And Craig Berube has, I think, done him a disservice by continuing to play him on the top pairing. Now, you could say he has no option, but I'm sorry, play Jake McCabe up there because Morgan Rielly cannot do it. He needs to be a 16 or 17 minute defenseman and not a 22 to 23 minute defenseman. He cannot do it anymore. And all this talk about, well, they're not going to trade him before the deadline. He's got the no move clause. I don't expect there to be anything that's changed with Morgan Riley over the summer. Like, well, they're going to have a discussion with him. He's going to say, no, I have a no move clause. I have a beautiful wife and a child, and we're based in Toronto, and I want to stay here.
And I have 4 years left.
And I have 4 years left.
Yeah.
And the only thing that this organization can do at that point is buy him out. That's it. I've been saying, he's either going to be here or they're going to buy him out. I don't see him waving to go to San Jose because they have no defenseman. Vancouver, he's from Vancouver, but Vancouver is worse off than the Leafs are right now. I'm sorry, it's either Toronto or he's getting bought out. I'm convinced that's the either or when it comes to Morgan Riley. I do not think he will accept a trade. That's why he has a no move clause, because he wanted to stay here. And I'm sorry, the fans can bitch and moan, but I think that's the reality.
Yeah, it's going to be hard. The one way that I think you can maybe get creative outside of that, if you're going to try to make a trade, is like, here's the guy that you have that doesn't work. Here's the guy that we have that doesn't work, and that maybe matches up for the Maple Leafs, so you don't have to pay too much, but you're just going to have to take back a player. But again, to your point, Mike, you need to find a destination that he's willing to go to, because otherwise It's all a moot point. It doesn't matter. It's going to be a very, very interesting summer. I don't foresee this happening tomorrow or Friday. I don't think so. I think it would take like blockbuster is maybe the wrong word here, but it would take something that would shock the world. If Morgan Riley gets moved on Friday, I do think that would be the case. Otherwise, it's a conversation for the summer, and you revisit it and see where you're at. And you know what? The only thing is, maybe at that point his tune has changed. Maybe at that point he's like, yeah, you know what? Okay, yeah, fine, I'm good. I don't need to be here. I'll move on. And then they find him a destination that works, and he goes there, and it's easy to deal with. But that is also on the positive side of thing. Knockout Panda there says Edmonton for Nurse in the off season. Yeah,
I know Jeff brought it up on I think it was with Greg a day or two ago about Nurse being the possible big move but I believe he has a no move clause too. Why would he want to leave Edmonton, a team that just made 2 cup finals? That's the thing. When you give players the hammer, they're going to use it. Not only, does their agent tell them that you use it, the PA is telling them that you use it. Don't waive your no move clause unless you want to move. And Morgan Riley was asked last year, do you want to go anywhere? And he says, no, I want to stay. Do you think that anything has changed? No, I don't think anything has changed. His play has dropped. He was good at the beginning of the season. He was battling something before the Olympic break. He's come back, and it's pretty much been the same thing, which tells you he's not the same player anymore, which tells you he needs to be transitioning to a different role, and he needs to be more conscientious in terms of his positioning on the ice, because he can't catch up for his own mistakes anymore. He can't hustle back and get in position. He doesn't have the speed to do it. He's not going to be as good an offensive defenseman as he was, but maybe he can convert himself. We've seen it happen with other offensive. Phil Housley was one of the worst defensive defensemen in the NHL as a young player, and then he lost his speed, and he became positionally a better defenseman. I think Morgan Riley is a smart hockey player. I think he can adjust, but you can't have him play 22, 23, 24 minutes a night anymore.
No, you cannot. All right, Mike, I'm going to get you out of here on a couple rapid fire things to close off. I'll get some of the similar questions that I asked Alberga, and I just want to know your perspective. Okay. So let's take the 3 guys that they sat out here tonight: McMahon, OEL, Lawton. How many, if any, of those guys do you foresee being Toronto Maple Leafs, still being here in Toronto by the end of the trade deadline on Friday?
I'll be optimistic, and I'll say all 3 are going to get traded.
Okay. Do you foresee the Toronto Maple Leafs moving a goaltender by the deadline?
I'm burning incense and praying that they do. And if it is, it's Anthony Stolarz. So, do I think it's going to happen? Probably not, but there is a need out there with a number of teams: Montreal, LA, Vegas, Utah, Carolina. There's enough need out there that if the Leafs are saying, okay, I'll trade a goalie, and Stolarz, based on how he played tonight and how he played against Edmonton before the break, some team could convince themselves and say, well, $3.75 million isn't that bad, and I'll worry about that 2 or 3 years down the road. So if they trade a goalie, it'll be Stolarz, but I think if they do move one, it's going to be more likely a summer move.
Is Calle Jarnkrok a Maple Leaf at 3:01 Eastern time on Friday?
Anybody call, he's yours. Give me, like I said, 7th round pick in 2029. Thank you. Gone. Because we know, it's been reported since I think November. He's going back to Sweden. Okay, let him have a last crack at a Stanley Cup. Trade him to Nashville. Anywhere. Anybody wants him, he's yours.
Yeah.
It's like a discount bid.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you something I didn't ask Nick, and I'll phrase it this way to steal a phrase from Jeff there, but I'll phrase it this way on it. Do the Maple Leafs end up with a new roster player come Friday at 3 Eastern time?
I think it's 50-50. I think that would be sort of thinking outside the box. That would go along with my theory about you putting Tanev on season-ending LTIR and opening up the cap space. They then would have the cap space to add a player if a team is dumping a player that they need to clear salary for. I don't know who that would be. I would hope it would be a forward but I mean, I just can't imagine a team that is a contending team dumping a player because they want to compete in the playoffs, and that player should have some value to them. But anything is possible. I'd say 50-50 that they could do that.
Okay, and final question here for you. By the end of the trade deadline, do the Maple Leafs have a new first-round pick or first-round picks in their arsenal?
If they trade those 3 players, I think they'll have 1 first-round pick. I think they'll probably, for Lawton, will get probably a second-round pick. And McMahon, for McMahon, they might get a roster player more than a draft pick. I mean, because he's got such a low AAV, and if they retain, it's under the league minimum. You could get a young prospect for Bobby McMahon. I mean, all the contenders, all the ones that have a need for a forward and that can fit that cap hit under the salary cap, they don't have first round picks. Mm-hmm. None of them do. Colorado doesn't. Edmonton, Vegas, Dallas, none of them have first round picks. Carolina is the only one. They have Dallas's first round pick. So, according to Elliott, a lot of teams are talking about Bobby McMahon. Okay, well, maybe you can drive up the price to get a first-round pick, but I would say probably out of those 3 guys, you'll get a first and a couple seconds, and maybe somebody who could play in the NHL this year or next year.
Okay, I lied. I actually have one more. I'm just curious. If you had to put a percentage, if you had to assign a percentage to it, what is the percentage that Brad Treliving doesn't move anyone come deadline time?
0. I mean, he cannot. If he does that, I mean, this city will explode. It really will. He better go into witness protection. I mean, really, yeah, I mean, he cannot. I mean, especially after what I said, his last move was July 16th. This team has been an abject failure.
Yeah,
I can't remember the phrase that Pierre Maguire used about the Leafs this year. It was extremely disappointing, or it was something
unmitigated disappointment.
Yeah, an unmitigated disappointment. That's what it is, and that's true. That's completely true. Other than a 10-game span after Christmas, this team has been a cluster bleep. It really has. And I'm sorry. It's like somebody has to be to blame for it. And B, if you're a manager of this team, you need to start this reset and retool before Friday at 3:00. And if you don't, you should be fired on the spot.
Yep, I agree with you. You cannot get through Friday without moving anybody. There, at bare minimum, needs to be one. One will at least alleviate pressure. Zero will drive this place up a fucking wall if it doesn't happen. Mike, I appreciate the time here tonight. We will see you tomorrow on the sheet at 1:30 Eastern time. Talking some Sabres there. I'm sure you'll probably get asked some Leafs questions, but talking Sabres with Jeff Merrick and Greg Wyshynski. I'm looking forward to it. I did an amazing job booking that guest, so I'm really excited about that. But Mike, thanks for the time tonight, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, it would be great. And I'm sure by that time, Colton Parayko will be looking for palm trees in the Western New York area. So,
Yikes.
Then, Zach.
All right, thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. There you go. Mike in Buffalo from the Hockey Hot Stove. Appreciate him stopping by here on the post-game show, Leafs Nation After Dark, right here on the Leafs Nation 401, right here on YouTube. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe here to the channel. If you guys are looking for trade deadline content coming up over the next little while, make sure to subscribe to the Daily Face-Off YouTube channel. Everything you need. A list of guests that are unbelievable. Jeff Merrick is hosting. He'll be joined on that show by Colby Cowan, Johnny Lazarus, Wojtek Wolski will be stopping by, Carter Hutton, Tyler Yaremchuk, Hart Levine, David Pinota as our insider there on that show. We'll get Matt Larkin involved, potentially have some special guests stop by. We're going to be doing our best to be getting on some players, coaches, I don't know, you name it. We'll be calling and we'll be seeing if they can jump on the show 11 a.m. Eastern time till 4 p.m. Eastern time on Friday, March 6th. Full, in-depth, comprehensive coverage of the NHL trade deadline will be taking place over on the Daily Faceoff YouTube channel. So make sure to subscribe, head on over there so you don't miss a minute of the action, breaking everything down right here on YouTube. So we'll see you guys then for that. For people in the chat who want to get involved in the show here tonight, make sure to click on that link pinned at the top of the chat. You click on the link, join the call that I've sent in there. I will get to all of you guys in the chat, whether you have questions about where we're at in this season and what my thoughts are on things going forward. If you have comments or concerns about tonight's game, if you've got projected trades, if you want to pitch a trade to me, I don't care. Call into the post-game show. Let's hear from you guys, your thoughts on this Maple Leaf season, this game tonight, and the trade deadline approaching on Thursday. I want to hear all of that. In the meantime, there's a couple things I want to get to because they came in and I wasn't ignoring them, but just wanted to make sure we got to our guests first here. If you want to get a question, a comment, a concern read on the show here tonight, make sure to send those in via Super Chat to Sick. Proceeds from our Super Chats go to Sick Kids Charity, Canada's #1 research-intensive children's hospital, #3 in North America. Last year, I've said it before, I'll say it again, we raised about $4,500 for Sick Kids Charity. This season, we pretty much matched that here already at the trade deadline. We'll still be doing coverage all season long, whether it's on Leafs Morning Take or here on Leafs Nation After Dark for every Toronto Maple Leafs game. Hopefully, after Friday, we're talking about prospects that are in the system. We're talking about young guys coming up and playing on this team. We'll be talking about maybe some new players that they've added. If they do bring back guys like what Mike suggested there, we'll be breaking it all down on After Darks through the rest of the season. But make sure you get those Super Chats in. I will answer and read all of them here on the post-game show. Let's get to the Super Chats that we do have lined up here. Let's start with Chopsticks, who says Dive Bomb Dave for GM. I don't know who that is, but thank you for the Super Chat. He said, Double Apex says, let's be honest, Tree Living is going to do nothing. If he is steering the ship, this team isn't going into a rebuild like it should. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if like rebuild is what you necessarily need to be doing. I personally don't view it as the only option here. I do still think Austin Matthews and William Nylander are unbelievable players. I think you're at least afforded the luxury of Austin Matthews having 2 years left on his deal that you can trial next season. And if it doesn't work, then you could look at moving him, whether it's at the deadline or if it's in the summer. I don't care. But, you know, you look at next season, you look at this summer and you take an opportunity to reset. And, you know, I know that we have some people here who are not that intelligent. And I think that their choice of team that they cheer for should have been a dead giveaway in the first place. But pushing back on the idea of shutting guys down for the rest of the season. Well, you're not just saying, hey, don't play. You're taking guys who are injured or banged up or may need some recovery period and saying, sit out. Austin Matthews, maybe you've got a shoulder problem. Maybe it's your back and you need to rehab this thing. Maybe it's your hand. Well, the Olympics have come and gone. Four Nations has come and gone. You captained both of those teams. You won your Olympic gold medal. It's time for you to get the rehab and the recovery that you need. I don't know. Does he need surgery? Who the hell knows? But take the time now to go and do that, because now you're going to have more of a runway than you ever have. You look at this season in years past, you're going, okay, you've got 20 games left after this one. You're going to have to battle through those. You're going to have to battle through a playoff run. Who the hell knows how long that goes? And then you start your recovery. Instead, you can sit them down on March 6th, March 7th, and you say, hey, buddy, it's time for you to go take a break, have at it, get what you need done, and go get rested for next season. Similar thing you can do with Matthew Knies and William Nylander. Obviously, they need to be injured enough for that to take place. The NHL does check on these things, but you look at a William Nylander who's dealt with groin injuries all season. Even right now, he doesn't necessarily look like the same guy. You talk about what he did at the Olympics. He didn't play. He didn't practice, for Sweden during the Olympics. He played games. He did not practice. We know he's banged up. We know the groin's been bothering him. Take the rest of the season off. Don't risk any further injury. Let's sit you out and get you ready for next year. Matthew Knies, your knee is still hurting because, he took the Olympic break. I thought he was going to come out guns a-blazing. I thought he was going to be on fire, and it just isn't the case. He still looks like a guy who's playing through something and can't play to the Matthew Knies capabilities that we know. This is a guy who has taken a significant step back this year, whether that's because of the role he's been put in, whether that's because of the usage he's been given, the systems, or if it's just the injury. Doesn't matter. He's taken a step back. Let's reset, refresh, and get ready for next year. Take these guys, sit them out. You've got injuries that you're dealing with. You can sit out for the rest of the season and get back at it next year. I think that that's a fair way to approach it. And then you see what you've got. I want to see Austin Matthews play under a different coach. Steve Valiquette put it out there today. I'll see if I can find this here in real time. 1 second. Steve Valiquette put out this chart. And, a lot of people want to tie the slumping or the fall off of Austin Matthews to Mitch Marner. And I'm not going to completely discredit it because I understand Mitch Marner is an amazing playmaker and was a huge part in helping Austin Matthews. But let's go back to last season when Austin Matthews was here and compare it to his 69 goal season under Sheldon Keefe, which I know that, it's chalk and cheese, as Merrick puts it, where you're looking at a back injury last season that he dealt with that we know is significant versus a healthy year under Sheldon Keefe in the 69-goal year. But Steve Valiquette put this out, and I thought it was very interesting, as he put on the tweet, interesting. Pulling this up here on the screen for everybody else to take a look at. Austin Matthews' slot line performance, so slot line chances, getting in the slot and getting opportunities. Under Sheldon Keefe, when he scored 69 goals. For those listening on the podcast, I'll do my best to articulate the graphic that I'm looking at. So here's the 69-goal season. 62 slot line chances. He scored 20 slot goals, and he had 32% shooting percentage. Last season, this is still with Mitch Marner here. So this is again goes to the point of why I want to see what he looks like under a new coach and a new system, because this was with Mitch Marner. Yes, the injury is a part of it, but you don't drop off like this so much, even with that guy still here, if it's just an injury. I strongly believe that. And then it carries over into this season. Slot line chances last season, 29. Compare that to the season before, 62. This season, 7 goals in the slot, 20 the year before. Obviously, we're looking at 20 games left, so you can't imagine he's going to score 13 slot goals for the rest of this year. His shooting percentage, 24% this year versus 32% last year. And then this season, to this point, he's sitting at 22 slot line chances, 6 goals, and 27% shooting. He's not getting the same opportunities. He's not getting the same chances. And I know a lot of people want to pin it right away on Mitch Marner not being here anymore and saying everybody ran him out of town and you're looking at Matthews was a Marner merchant. I disagree with that. But I think the biggest tail of the tape that you could look at is what Steve Valiquette put out. And it's the slot chances and it's his utilization. We talked a lot about him being a $13.5 million Phil Deneau, Part of that was because his play did drop off. Part of that is because Mitch Marner's not here this season. Part of it, look at last season and this season combined, it's the usage. Look how he's being played. He's being played like he's filled the no and not given those same chances. He gets opportunities. He's still scoring some goals here, at least at a rate where you can stomach, okay, yeah, he's scoring 30 goals or whatever. That's okay. You still want a guy to score 30 goals. I think he can push back to 40, 45, maybe even 50 again under the right coaching, the right systems, and the better line mates. I think that helps him a lot. I'm not trying to say that's the entire problem. There's other things that are issues here, like playing with Max Domi and Bobby McMahon. But again, putting him into a different situation with a different coach and a different mindset, I think helps. The other thing that I'll also point out here is how good are the Maple Leafs defensemen or defensive system at breaking out, getting up ice in transition, and putting the puck on the forward sticks. Because to me, it's not good enough. I don't think that they've been good enough at doing that. I think more often than not, you're watching Austin Matthews have to get in on the forecheck and recovering pucks and stuff like that. And I am with you in terms of, yes, forecheck hard, be physical, all that kind of stuff. But Austin Matthews and William Nylander are puck possession players. You're taking the puck off their stick with the way that this team is playing and with the way that this team is constructed, for that matter. You're not giving them enough opportunities to get up ice and control play and create chances for themselves because they have to go get it back and hope that after a 40-second defensive zone shift, they can go through the neutral zone, battle back for the puck, flip it into a corner, and then win the puck, battle back. Then win the puck back, then create the chance in the offensive zone. By that point, you're deeper into your shift. You've just exerted a ton of energy. You probably don't need to. If you just have possession going up the ice, I want to see what these guys do in a different system. So, I just want to see what these guys have in them in a different look and under a different coach. Craig1392 says, I feel zero sympathy for you two. Glad Jays in Canada lost. Craig, what the fuck? Fuck you, Craig. Glad Jays in Canada lost, dickhead. Paul Doucette with a super chat doesn't say anything here on the super chat, just sends in $5. Thank you, Paul, for that super chat. Maxentius Decimus also says, why do I feel like the only people who don't know the season is over are the management? Yeah, I mean, I kind of get that vibe too. And maybe it's not just the management, but it feels like it's even above them. It feels like it's MLSE who's clinging onto this idea that maybe something is still there. And it's astonishing that could even be the viewpoint. I think most people in this market recognize that even if it's not a full rebuild and selling off of Matthews and Nylander, there needs to be some major changes. You need to overhaul your defensive core. You can't run back the same group that you have this season. You can't put those guys out there because they're already old, they're already slow, they can't move the puck. Now you're going to bring them back and they're going to be older and slower and still can't move the puck. That just makes no sense to me. You need to revamp what that decor looks like. I think the bottom six was much better constructed. If healthy for a full season, I think we would have seen that play out much better. But, you talk about the defensive system. At times they can get lost out there, but everybody does because it's piss poor. Then you look at the top six. It wasn't good enough. Losing Mitch Marner, I'll say it again. Yeah, it hurt because he was a high-end player, especially in the regular season or specifically in the regular season. But the issue wasn't necessarily that you just lost Mitch Marner. The issue was that you just didn't bring anything else in. There was no supplements. There was no adding to your top six. There was no high-end forwards that were brought in that you went out and acquired. You just kicked tires on everybody. Why couldn't you have been more heavily involved in the JJ Peterka situation? Why couldn't you have tried to pluck Alex Tuck from the Buffalo Sabres in the summer? Obviously right now that's not something that's going to happen, but why weren't you more involved in that? Why weren't you more proactive? Here's a guy on an expiring deal. Go find that guy. Bring him in here. Why couldn't you have gone out and found your Justin Sourdifs like what Washington did and brought those types of pieces in? Why was that not something that was was done this summer. Bringing in some depth guys, no issues there, but why was there no replacement of top 6 guys? You brought in Matias Michelli and hoped that he would be a guy who could fill that role. I mean, I appreciate the optimism in it, but you had to recognize that that wasn't working and then trying again. I still like the acquisition of Matias Michelli. I do, but it didn't solve the problem. So why was there no second thought or regroup and saying, hey, let's go out there and try this again. Let's go see what we can find. You kicked tires. You didn't make trades. As Mike brought up, July 16th was the last trade that they made. It wasn't good enough. Even Knockout Panda here bringing up, maybe get in on Kyrou. Kyrou is a guy that I think could have made sense here. I think he could have made sense. But you never strongly pursued that guy. Or you looked at it and said, well, he doesn't work with Craig Berube. Because Craig Berube doesn't like him and he doesn't like Craig Berube. And if that's the case, then you're losing out on top 6 options because you didn't have Craig Berube. You know what this team needs? Speed in their top 6. Speed in their lineup in general. That's a guy who could have brought it. Donnie Does Dishes says, I'm confused. You said getting Joshua, getting Watt, Joshua, and Michelli were all great finds. They were. They were. But you didn't replace anything in the top 6. You made your bottom 6 better, which I think is something you really needed to do because you haven't had that before. But you didn't get better in the top 6. You didn't. That was your problem. Bless myself, I guess. Sorry. But yeah, I go again to it like getting guys to fill out your bottom 6 was great. The problem wasn't losing Mitch Marner. The problem was not replacing it. Yeah, you tried to get Mikko Rantanen. That one was a little bit out of your hands at that point in time because Marner just said no. Who else was out there? Find the guy. Find the piece. Keep hitting that like button, subscribe here to the channel. The smelling salts will be made up tomorrow. I owe you guys 6 going into today. I owe you guys 8 now here at 118. So those will be done tomorrow throughout the entire watch along that we're going to do. Myself and producer Vic will be downtown Toronto doing a watch along for tomorrow's game. I think we're going to have Johnny Lazarus stop by the program to give his thoughts on what's happened with the Rangers, with the Maple Leafs, what will happen at the trade deadline, who he anticipates going, where he anticipates them going. We'll do that. We'll open up the call lines for people during the course of the show tomorrow as well to watch that game. I figure that a lot of people don't necessarily care about the game and they just want to talk about the Maple Leafs and what will happen going forward. So I'll extend it beyond the show and still continue to take calls after the fact. We'll probably go for like an hour after the game. But yeah, we'll do a watch along for tomorrow's game, and I want to make it more free-flowing and easy for people. So you want to jump in and give your thoughts and call and chat and all that kind of stuff, we'll be there. A lot of people, I feel like, might want to have the game on and then have us on the side, and I feel like that'll be a fun thing to do for the game tomorrow night. After that, we'll get back to regularly scheduled programming here on the post-game show, but I feel like tomorrow night would be a fun watch-along night. It's not going to be as much of a fun game, so maybe we can make the watch-along fun. Vic and I are trying to think of things to do for tomorrow's game, so if you have suggestions, comment them either in the chat now or in the comments after the show here today and let us know what you guys are thinking and feeling about that. I want to do something that gets you guys involved. So whether it's however many likes the stream gets, we do a certain amount of something. If it's subscribers we get, if it's super chats hit, I think I would be open to doing that. I think it would be fun for tomorrow's show. So send in your suggestions, make them realistic. We can do some challenges and stuff like that for the stream tomorrow and have some fun with it, because I can't imagine playing the New York Rangers tomorrow is going to be much of a fun viewing experience for people. So we'll be at it tomorrow for that. Show's not done here tonight. We still have some things to do as well. People in the chat, if you want to call in, click on that link that's pinned in. Nobody's called in here tonight. It's a first night. Everybody's been quiet. We've got like 500 people here in the chat right now who are watching, and nobody wants to call in on this one tonight. Also, to be clear to people, I am not in Brantford. And I did not move to Brantford. I will be moving back downtown Toronto come next week. So I'll be in a new spot next week. I think next Thursday is the first game that I'll be in from the new place, but just moved home to the parents' house right now. All right. I'm just looking at this chart here from Puck IQ. Jason Dickinson ranks second among all forwards, minimum 20 games played and percentage of 5-on-5 time on ice spent against elite competition. He's playing nearly 50% of his minutes matched up against opposing top lines, and he's managed to rank 80th in relative on ice dangerous shots allowed per 60 in those minutes. Austin Matthews ranks 4th on that list. He plays 47.5% of his minutes against top-ranked opponents. So there is another example of the utilization. That tweet comes from Matthews fan, courtesy of the data, courtesy of Puck IQ. So Matthews is just, again, constantly being matched up against top-line talent. All right, let's get to a couple of things here that we have left here on the postgame show, and we'll start with our best bet. Our best bet segment is a presentation of Bet365. Whatever your bet is, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use promo code NATION, that's NATION, code NATION, NATION, must be 19 or older, Ontario only. Please play responsibly. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, visit connectsontario.ca. Our best bet tonight, ladies and gentlemen, it cashed. It had to happen the way that it did, especially given how this season has gone. Coming into this one, I had lost 3 in a row. I thought it was much worse than that, but 3 in a row I had lost. We were down 2.18 units on the season. The Easton Cowan shot that I thought ended up being his goal does not end up being his goal. In fact, they credited it to William Nylander. So until they change anything, if they change anything, William Nylander gets that goal and cashes for us. That wins us $210 and brings us down to minus $8 on the season, which would be minus $0.8 or units, I should say, on the year. That was our best bet. That one cashes. I can't even take too much credit for it. It was incredibly lucky that we won that best bet, but we did. We won. So I'll take it and we'll run. Almel in the chat. Can you talk about your experience of moving back home with your parents? It has been fantastic. Between hanging out with my dog, which is pretty awesome, to having my mom make breakfast and lunch and dinner, being there that I get just made and ready while I just sit here and work. And then I get up, go down, and get to eat is unbelievable. The actual moving experience was a complete and utter fucking nightmare. Let's call it what it is. I told you guys on Saturday what ended up happening. We found out I couldn't move on Sunday, so I had to move all my big stuff on Saturday and then move everything else on Sunday. It took me 12 hours to move on Sunday. And then I got home. You guys want a little insight, which I'm sure nobody gives a shit about, but I'll give you some insight. This is just an example of how the move went. I rented one of those orange and white trucks. I'm not going to say the name of them. You guys can guess. Rented one of those, picked it up in Toronto, and I did the drop-off destination as a different destination. The closest one I could go to was 20 minutes away from where I live. So I finished dropping everything off at my house. I drive to the location to drop it off. The drop-off location made a mistake. They made a mistake. So I got there, and the drop-off parking lot was full. And when I say full, I literally mean people were so pissed off. They were just leaving their trucks, leaving their cars, leaving the keys in them, and walking away. It was filled up to the road, blocking the sidewalk, fully covered. So I had to go into a nearby parking lot. I called the company and I said, we got a situation. I scheduled to drop off here. They accepted the drop off. Now I have to find somewhere else. So they booked me into a new spot. It's like 8-minute drive away. I said, no problem. Drive to the new spot. It's in some sketchy parking lot thing. Up this hill, off like a side street. I go park. We go to leave the car. I can't find the drop box where you leave the key. I call the company. I'm telling them I can't find it. They're like, well, it's supposed to be here. It's not there. They said, can I leave the keys on the front door of this place? Nope, you can't do that. Can I leave the keys in the truck? Nope, you can't do that. They said, you know what? Leave the truck. Come back in the morning. Drop the keys off. So I'm like, okay, this is Sunday night. It's like 11:30 at this point. I'm like, okay. Or 11 o'clock at this point. I'm like, okay, it is what it is. My girlfriend was the one who drove me to the place so that I had my car. So I leave the place. I drive her to her place. We drop her off. I'm driving home from her place. And I get a call from the company with the trucks. Hey, we see your truck here. Where's the keys? I have to drive 20 minutes back, drop off the keys, and then drive home. Fucking nightmare situation. And then Amal comes to pick up the gear that I had from our Brantford trip, and it got all mixed up in the move. I had some things. My girlfriend had some things. Turns out I'm kind of a fucking idiot. Didn't plan very well. But that was the moving experience. Being at home with my parents, great. It's been awesome. Doing the move sucked. Moving sucks. That was my experience. I got a caller on the line here. I want to take this call, and then we'll get to some other stuff. Maybe if other people want to call in, go ahead. But we do have a caller on the line, so let's welcome to the program, I think for the first time here, Francesco. Francesco, what's up?
How are you, Zach?
I think I've accepted the fate of the Maple Leafs, Francesco, so I feel better than I would have on a normal night. How are you?
I'm all right. The main thing with this team is, as long as this guy Tree Living is here and this management, we can be waiting and we're not going anywhere. You take a look at this guy Tree Living's history as a manager. Name me one good trade that he has done. I don't think we can find one.
I think the only one I would say in terms of, what you paid to get the guy, I think the only one I would say I liked and still don't have a problem with is Dakota Joshua, but even that one is iffy. Like the Michelli one doesn't work. The Wall one was obviously for Marner. Yeah. The Lawton and the Carlo ones were significant overpays. Do I like Scott Lawton as a player? Yes. Do I like what you gave up to get him? No. So I think you're right.
He is afraid to make changes. You need somebody who has the balls and needs to do what has to be done with the team. That's why I admire a guy like that guy Zito for Florida. The team finished in first place when they won the President's Trophy, whatever. Still went and traded with to get Tkachuk or whatever. Seen that the team needed changes, had to do it. This team here, we've been here 10 years with Matthews, Nylander, and all this. We're never going to win. They're good players, but they've proven 10 years when everything is on the line, they cannot win. So we can make all the changes we want to change. As long as these guys are here, we're not going to win. It's simple. That's it. It's been proven.
I think that's a good point, in terms of being willing to make change and to do things that are uncomfortable is not something the Toronto Maple Leafs have done. And, you can look at the picks and the prospects, sure, that they've given up. In the big picture of things, I think when you compare it to the trade that you just brought up, it pales in comparison. It's the easy way out to trade picks and prospects for guys rather than making a significant change. As you just said, Bill Zito, their team was a wagon. They were unbelievable in the regular season. And then he took Jonathan Huberdeau, who had an unreal year in Florida, and he traded him to the Calgary Flames to Matthew Tkachuk. He took a swing. He said, fuck it, I'm going to do something risky. And he made a change that has gotten them 2 Stanley Cups. There's obviously other pieces involved, but it got them 2 Stanley Cups, and he's been one of the biggest pieces in terms of the importance of getting them to that point. I know it hasn't paid off for Carolina yet as well, but the same thing goes for Eric Tulsky there getting Mikko Rantanen. He took the swing. Martin Necas got traded for Mikko Rantanen. It didn't work out, so he moved on from Mikko Rantanen and brought in new players. But he was willing to make the change. He was willing to take the risk, and this team for 9 years was too scared to make that change. Whether it was Marner before his no moves kicked in or before his contract kicked in, they wouldn't do it. If it was William Nylander before his stuff kicked in, they wouldn't do it. But one of those guys probably had to go because you needed to make some change. You needed to recognize the failures that you had and say, hey, something's got to look different, and they refused to do so. It's a good point, Francesco.
Exactly. And now you see Florida. Okay, they are going to miss the playoffs. I'll bet you any money that by Friday he's going to be making changes. He's going to be making changes. Even though they win, he's there to make changes. This guy, Tree Living, check out his record in Calgary and check here. He's too scared. And he won't do it. He won't do it. It's as simple as that. He can be here another 20 years. He won't do it. He won't go for it. We had Fletcher here when he made the trade for Gilmore. 10 players, he took the chance. In sports, you have to take a chance.
Yes, you do, and they wouldn't do it.
The same thing over and over again.
Yep.
You lose, at least you go out, hey, I tried.
Yeah,
and
I think that's a good point.
He is too afraid to make changes. Because,
so what do you think?
We can
go
see
ahead.
it. I said, okay, we drafted all these players, Matthews, Nylander, Marner, fine. We gave them 10 years. 10 years, we made the playoffs, we didn't advance. Don't you think sooner or later we have to say to ourselves, hey, this is not working. We got to do something different. No, keep on continuing with the same thing over and over again. You're not going to do it. You don't advance with these players. It's as simple as that. That's it.
Yeah,
they won't do it. They can keep Matthews here. They can keep Matthews here for as long as they want, or Nylander, and do the changes that they're not going to win. These players cannot win when it comes down to the important games that to have to win. They won't do it. It's like now. Why aren't the Leafs making the playoffs this year? Because they blew the games in October and November that they were supposed to win. If you're thinking of winning the Stanley Cup, you're not supposed to lose to teams below you. And that is why we are in this predicament. It's shameful. A team like Buffalo, look where they are and look where the Leafs are. Shameful. Shameful. Everybody was laughing at Buffalo. Look where Buffalo is and look where the Leafs are with Matthews and all these guys. Isn't it sad? It's very sad.
Yeah, it is. Well, Francesco, what do you think for the future of this team? Do you have any faith at all?
I like the Leafs. The Leafs are my team, but I get pissed off because the management doesn't know what the hell they're doing. And like I told you, we can keep Matthews, Nylander, whatever we want here. It'll be the same. If it hasn't advanced in 10 years, is it going to change now? Is it going to change now?
Yeah. Well,
It's been proven. It's been proven.
so let's say you're the GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs, Francesco.
That's right.
What do you do?
I don't care what anybody says. If I got a good deal for Matthews, I would do it. And I start to build the team the proper way, because with him, I'm not going to go anywhere. People can laugh all they want to what I'm saying, but what I'm saying is the truth. Matthews is a good player, but he cannot win when it has to be done. Simple. That's it. When everything is on the line, what happened last year when we played Florida? When everything was on the line in the 7th game, he didn't show up. What happened the year before? He didn't show up. So how many chances are you going to give him? And this guy Pelly comes and says that because of injuries, we're not where we are. This guy's nuts. We are where we are because we didn't win the games that we were supposed to win in October and November. That's why we're here today. That's where we are here today. That's why we're not making the playoffs, and it's shameful because a team like this should be in the playoffs. You got a team like Buffalo, like I said, was way behind us, and they're almost in first place, and we're missing the playoffs, and they're ahead of us. Shameful. It's a disgrace. You might think I'm crazy, but I'm just saying as it is, right?
Yeah, you are saying it as it is, and I appreciate that. So, do you trade both of them or just one, Matthews and Nylander?
Really, if like say Friday, somebody gave me a deal that I wanted to do and that I'm content, I would trade both of them. He's only got 2 more years left. He's going to stay here another 2 years. That's right. Okay, so now you're going to do tinker around. By the time these players are ready to play, where's Matthews and Nylander going to be? They're going to be done, right? So basically, we've wasted 10 years, 10 years of this player's time, and we didn't do nothing.
Yes, that is correct. That did happen, Francesco.
We did the right according to Shanahan, right? We tanked out. We drafted. We went through the proper way of drafting players, whatever. So why are where we are today? Why are where we are today? Because this team, number one, they're inconsistent. And this has been going on for years. They lose to teams that they're supposed to win. If you want to be a contending team, okay, fine, you lose to a team below you once in a while, but you're not supposed to lose consistent to teams below you. You don't do that. And the Leafs do that. So the Leafs are where they are today because the season was basically over in November. They lost to teams that they should have won. It's simple.
Yep. Anything else you got for me here tonight, Francesco? I appreciate this call.
That's basically it. I like your show, but this
Thank
is
you.
what it is. People can say whatever they want to say. As long as we have Matthews there, Nylander there, we're not going anywhere. Yes, they're good players, but we're not going to see the cup with them. When Masai
one question for you. One question for you. The chat wants to know. The chat wants to know your thoughts.
Yes,
your thoughts on this. They're asking me to ask you about your thoughts on Craig Berube.
Craig Berube is not the coach for this team. He's not the coach for this team. He cannot get the players to play for him, and it's basically proven they quit on him. They quit on him. Simple as that. Look at this team's power play. I've been watching hockey all my life. I've never seen a power play like this. You watch junior teams that have a better power play than the Leafs. Now, who teaches them all these things? Who teaches them all these things? Come on, it's ridiculous. Not even in the days of Pat Quinn, the Leafs had a power play. This is embarrassing. You know.
Yeah. So, do you think a different coach would help this?
Pardon?
Do you think that a different coach would help this situation, or do you think that it's not just a different coach who fixes this? There's more to the problem.
The problem with this is the poison we have on this team. 44, 88, and 34. As long as those guys are here, we can get Jesus Christ. We're not going anywhere. How many coaches have we changed? Right? We had Kiefer, gone, not good. Babcock, gone. Bruby, gone. Don't you think sooner or later they have to say it's the players? But Bruby is not the coach for this team. It's as simple as that. Okay, I give you an example before I'm holding you up too much.
No, you're good, man.
Lindy Ruff for the Buffalo Sabres. Team was garbage, piece of garbage. Everybody laughing at him. Why do they win every game? Because they play for the coach. They play for the coach, and they play as a team. That's the difference.
What do you have to say about the fact that the Edmonton Oilers and Connor McDavid have gone through significantly more coaches than what the Toronto Maple Leafs and Austin Matthews have gone through?
What coaches did Edmonton Oilers have before?
I mean, I got to go through the full list, but
I'm just saying. The most successful coach they ever had there was Glenn Sather. He won all the championships, right? After that, after he was gone, they really didn't have a decent coach there, right?
Yeah, so the coaches that he's gone through in Edmonton, Todd McClellan, Ken Hitchcock, Dave Tippett, Jay Woodcroft, Chris Knoblaw are currently the ones that they've gone through. I thought that there was more, but that's at least 5.
Yeah, that's at least 5. But what I'm trying to say is when the players want to play for the coach, it means a lot. Yeah. Just like I finished telling you earlier. Why did Buffalo Sabres change so quickly? Because they're all biting into the coach. They never lose a game. Don't you see them? They're winning almost every game. They've a magic wand, and they're winning every game. See? There you go. They were laughing at that guy. They were laughing at that guy, Kevin Adams, right? They say this guy is a shit general manager, doesn't know nothing. Well, take a look there on the computer at Buffalo's roster and take a look at the Leafs roster. Who would you rather have? So basically, this new GM that came in, he's having a good time due to the players that the other guy drafted. But what I mean, their drafting is great, and they have very good players, way better than the Leafs, way better. So this guy, Tree Living, I wouldn't even want them to be managing a Dairy Queen. He couldn't even manage it. I wouldn't want him to marry a Dairy Queen. You're going to see him on Friday. The guy's been kicking tires since last July. What trade has he done? Look at today. How many teams made trades today? Where were the Leafs? Now he's going to come on Friday and said, well, we tried and we couldn't make. He's not going to make nothing. He's not going to make one trade. You'll be there on Friday coming back and he won't make one trade. Why do you think he got fired in Calgary? How many good trades did the guy make in Calgary? I didn't see him make one. Who do you think got rid of Sam Bennett? Who traded Sam Bennett? This guy, Tree Living. He traded away Sam Bennett. He traded away Sean Monahan. He traded, well, to Chuck, he had to trade him. He didn't want to be there. But look how many trades he got suckered in. He didn't win one trade. Oh, go look at your computer. Go look at the history of how many trades Brad Treliving made, and name me one. Name me one that he has won. A trade that he has won.
Yeah, I know. I can't name that many, if any at all. Francesco, anything else you got for me here tonight?
No, that's basically it. I already said a lot, but what I'm saying is we can keep Matthews and Nylander here as long as we want. Like I said, change players around. As long as these guys are here, we're not winning anything. And I don't care what people say, but it's obvious. All these players have been here over 10 years, and every year is the same results. So what does that tell you? What does that tell you? Okay, if it was 1 or 2 years, fine. Okay, what happens to the other years? Obviously, there has to be a problem, right?
Yeah, it does seem like there's a problem.
Well, they have no trade clause. Well, buy them out. Like Morgan Riley. Oh, we can't get rid of him. It's very easy to get rid of him. Buy him out. Rogers has more money than all of us. In 2 minutes, Rogers, that's their lunch money, paying out Morgan Riley. That's their lunch money. They paid off Brian Burke and they paid off Mike Babcock for sitting at home, and they can't pay off Morgan Riley? Are you kidding me? These guys are laughable. You know, they're laughable. But the problem is everybody believes in them. That's why. You know, we all want the championship team, but when you have bad management, you're not going anywhere. And that's the problem here.
All right, Francesco.
Did you see, before you go, did you see what Keith Pelly today? He was at the FC press conference, and they asked him a question about the Leafs. He said, well, there's a time and a place for that. I will answer those questions later on. And you know what his answer is going to be at the end of the season? Brad Treliving back again. That's all. That will be his answer.
All right, Francesco. Thank you for the call tonight. This was awesome. My friend. You better call in again. I want you to call back.
All right, no problem.
All right, thanks, Francesco. Okay. Appreciate it. Enjoy your night.
Goodbye.
There you go, Francesco. That was an electric phone call. I mean, there's no way to put it other than electric. That was an amazing phone call from Francesco, so thank you. That is what the call line is here for, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't already, hit that like button, subscribe here to the channel, Leafs Nation 401 right here on YouTube. A quick reminder, you saw them pop up in the chat there at one point. Daily Face-Off YouTube channel commenting here in the live show. You want to get your trade deadline fix in come Friday, starting at 11 a.m. Eastern time over on the Daily Face-Off YouTube channel. Jeff Merrick hosting with special guests and panels, including Carter Hutton, Wojtek Wolski. We'll also have Colby Cohen, Johnny Lazarus, Tyler Yaremchuk, our insider David Peñota, and Hart Levine from Puckpedia, who will be stopping by to give insights on caps, LTI, our retention spots, how all of that shakes out for everybody. When all the trades start falling into place come Friday, make sure to tune into the Daily Face-Off YouTube channel. Be there on Friday. Thanks to everybody who has watched and liked so far. We have a couple things to do before we can wrap up the show here tonight, including our play of the game. Send your play of the game in the chat there, ladies and gentlemen. I want to know what you guys have to say and what you guys think about this one here tonight. My play of the game is going to be the Dakota Joshua pass to Matias Maccelli and the Matias Maccelli goal. The play that he made entering the zone, protecting the puck, maintaining possession, getting himself into some open ice, and then finding Matias Michelli, who entered the zone and got down ahead of him, and then found himself into an open spot to open up for that shot. And then he let off a beautiful shot that beat Markstrom blocker side high. That was just a great play to me. That's going to be my play of the game for tonight. Honorable mention will just be Anthony Stolarz and his game in general. I said it before with Nick, but Anthony Stolarz makes 44 saves on 47 shots against, a .936 save percentage in this one. With that, let's get to our grade of the game. I want to know what you guys think about this one and how you would grade it. I think for me, I'm going to go with a... My grade. What is my grade going to be? My grade of the game. See, I'm kind of debating. I'll think out loud for you guys. I'm debating here. You got a loser point, which kind of pisses me off because I kind of want you to just lose and that's it. Was it a better hockey game? Yeah, probably a better hockey game than the last 4 that you played in. Between Tampa, Florida, Ottawa, and Philadelphia. It's better than those. Was it good hockey? Was it good hockey, or was it a good hockey game? No. Was it more exciting? Yes. I guess at this point, that's kind of what I care about is was it fun to watch? It was more fun to watch. So I'll go with a D. A D tonight. D plus maybe. I think that's a final. D plus. It's not a fail. It wasn't the most atrocious hockey game I've ever watched. I loved that Easton Cowan played 17 minutes. I loved the fact that he got to play on that first line. Maybe he's not going to be good enough here to play in the NHL the rest of this season, but let's find out. Let's give him opportunities. Either play him 17 minutes here or let him play 20 minutes in the AHL. I think those are your options. And okay, you want to play him 17 minutes with the Toronto Maple Leafs? Fine, go for it. Let's see what the kid's made of. Give him some confidence again. Open that back up. Let's see what the guy can do. I think that's a good idea for the Maple Leafs and their future. So that is my approach to that. I'm going to go with a D+. With that, let's get out of here on one final segment. I'm going to make this a part of the show through the rest of the season. My guy Kirby from the Cats and Rats podcast tweeted at me, and it pissed me off a little bit because he tweeted it out and tagged me. He's a Panthers fan, obviously. They did the draft simulator themselves live on stream the other day on their stream. They got the first overall pick on the first try. Rattled me to my core. The Florida Panthers win back-to-back Stanley Cups, and this guy's doing draft lottery simulators, and he's getting first overall picks on first spins. One spin. Everybody knows the rules. At this point in time, the Maple Leafs sit with the 11th best odds of getting the first overall pick. They have 65 points on the season. This is obviously here on the Tankathon, considering the point percentage and not actual points, so keep that in mind. But the Toronto Maple Leafs currently sit with 65. The teams that are ahead of them, if you're going to look at a top 5 pick, would include the Los Angeles Kings, who have 62. The Florida Panthers is 63. The New Jersey Devils, 64. Nashville, 62. Winnipeg, 58. Chicago, 56. Calgary, 55. New York, 54. St. Louis, 53. Vancouver, 43. Let's just see what happens. Who wins the draft lottery? One spin. Everybody knows the rules. Let's do it. Boston gets the 11th overall pick. That's all for me. Thanks for watching the show here tonight. Appreciate everyone who tuned in, liked, commented, subscribed. Thanks to Francesco for that amazing call. Thanks to Mike in Buffalo from the Hockey Hot Stove for calling in. Thanks to Nick Alberga for starting off the show here tonight. I will be back for tomorrow's game against the New York Rangers. We'll do a live watch along, so make sure to subscribe to the channel. We'll go live before the game, do a little bit of a preview, and then we will talk about the trade deadline throughout the course of the entire show. I think Johnny Lazarus will be joining us there as well to tee things up and talk about what he's seeing, hearing, thinking before the trade deadline. Thanks to everybody who watched. Reminder, Friday, March 6th, 11 a.m. Eastern time over on the Daily Faceoff YouTube channel. Make sure to tune in there. That's all from me tonight. Thank you guys. See you tomorrow. Keep believing. For more content just like this, including game previews, post-game live shows, Leafs Morning Take Monday through Friday with Nick Alberga and Jay Rosehill with special guests, as well as instant reaction videos, make sure to be subscribed here to the Leafs Nation YouTube channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss anything, and drop a like.